president, we see a lot of governors become president because there's that executive experience, and some U.S. senators. In DeSantis's case, he already has the credential of being a governor of a major state, and so I think that this maybe puts him on a national stage. It maybe gives him a dimension to his political profile that he doesn't already have, which is a kind of a foreign affairs dimension and a national geopolitical dimension to his political skill set. And it may be something that we know that in 2028, Trump is not running for president again. And so there's going to be a real question of who inherits that MAGA Republican mantle. And maybe it's DeSantis, and maybe this positions him well for this. But one of the things I think that DeSantis is probably calculating is there's also this kind of political dimension in Florida. We see Marco Rubio leaving, going to the U.S. Senate, or going to the State Department potentially, and then DeSantis going into the Defense Department. That leads a lot of questions about who takes those roles over in a very important state.
What do you make of, I'm going to call it back and forth kind of, with Chad Chronister, who is the Hillsborough County, Florida sheriff? He was picked to be the DEA administrator. Then just a couple days later, he came out and said, I'm withdrawing my name. But then one day later, Trump made sure to post on Truth Social that he had actually pulled the plug based on some other factors. So what do you make of that? Is that relevant? Is it significant that Trump did come out and say, no, I pulled the plug?
I think it may be a kind of a positioning about how Trump is in control of the process and that he is aware of some of the kind of criticisms going on. It may also be just sort of a clash of personality as well. I think that it is a kind of a sign, though, that Trump is really looking at this process as it reflects on him. This is one of the first decisions that a president makes, is picking his cabinet. And so, again, Trump wants to kind of position himself going in a particularized way with particular initiatives that kind of are going to frame his administration over the next 4 years. And so I think that's that kind of exchange is indicative of that political calculation.
And going in reverse just a little bit, are there any other candidates right now, any other nominees for Trump's cabinet that might have some issues getting confirmed by the Senate?
Well, the big question was, would he pick RFK Jr. to be in the cabinet? And there was a thought that that would be a controversial pick for a whole host of reasons because of some of the stances that RFK Jr. had made in the past. And it seems that he is going to be nominated. And one of the things now is that if Hegseth were to exit, and that's no longer an issue, similar to the way that Gates has exited, and that's no longer a kind of a major discussion, would there be kind of new people that emerge as the controversial picks? And RFK could be, for other reasons than the other two, kind of controversial just because of his political and kind of social stances. Again, we haven't even gotten into the confirmation process yet. And I think one of the things that the president wants to ensure is that there's this smooth confirmation process, and one that doesn't get mired down to some sort of political back and forth where you have vacancies going forward if Congress goes into recess, or candidates that have to be withdrawn during the confirmation process itself, which has obvious political fallout.
All right, Casey Myers there at Virginia Tech. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and breaking down, well, a lot of political headlines there. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
This is going to be one of the kind of these stories in 2025 when we go forward and talk about, who are going to be confirmed and not. And now also we're looking at Democrats who are potentially going to be bringing some tough questions to some of these nominees, knowing that the Republican majority is not enough where you can lose a lot of votes. And so, again, it remains to be seen how this all works out in the next few days. But I think this is going to be a story that is evolving.
All right. Thank you again for taking the time, as always, to join us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you are taking a live look here at the White House over in D.C. as we remind you that President-elect Trump's inauguration is January 20th. That is about a month and a half away. You can watch all of the events leading up to it, live, raw, and unfiltered, right here on Live Now from Fox. And on January 20th, we will be live throughout the day, and you can watch everything uninterrupted, again, right here on Live Now from Fox. Want to pop up this shot of the Capitol as we do stay in D.C. right now. Washington is now #1 in marijuana consumption. Recreational pot legal in the district, but still against federal law. Fox News Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel breaks down more on a new study.
A new study reveals 33% of adults in Washington, D.C. use marijuana. The District of Columbia is second only to Vermont in consumption. That's raising questions here and nationwide about the incoming Trump administration's marijuana policy. Then candidate Trump posted on his Truth Social, "As president, we will continue to focus on research to unlock the medical uses of marijuana to a Schedule III drug and work with Congress to pass common sense laws." Vice President-elect J.D. Vance favors a libertarian approach to the issue.
My attitude on this stuff is kind of live and let live. Like, keep it in your home. I don't like smelling it when I take my kids to the park, right?
Health and Human Services nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has expressed support for legalization and taxing it at the federal level. But incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune is part of a group of GOP senators that has opposed the Biden administration's efforts to lower the classification of marijuana. One expert suggests a change in classification would actually bring added protection.
What moving it from Schedule I to Schedule III does allow is it allows federal agencies like the FDA, USDA to step in and regulate these products, which it currently cannot touch.
In terms of ballot initiatives in this past election, Nebraska passed a legalized medical marijuana measure. But initiatives to legalize recreational marijuana failed in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Florida.
It's one big weed company has spent $100 million. And they wrote the amendment to benefit them, not to benefit the people of Florida. So this is not about freedom because they don't let you grow your own weed.
President-elect Trump is calling on state legislatures to responsibly create marijuana laws that prohibit the use of it in public spaces. But he maintains someone should not be a criminal in Florida or other restrictive states when marijuana is legal in 24 states and here in D.C. In Washington, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
Mike, thank you so much. The time now 6:14 on the East Coast and 3:14 on the West Coast. Do have to head to our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour, but so much more news to get to on the other side as we bring you the latest on the murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO, a manhunt underway. We're going to check in with Haley Fixler. She is with our Fox 5 New York station in 2 short minutes. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. The time 6:16 on the East Coast and 3:16 on the West Coast. The latest now on a story out of Midtown Manhattan. The manhunt does continue for the person who gunned down the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, Brian Thompson. Disturbing video, you see it there, shows the gunman as he opened fire on Thompson yesterday morning, executing him with a shot to the back. Haley Fixler with our Fox 5 New York team joining us now live from the scene with the latest on the investigation. Haley, good morning. Thank you for being here. What do we know so far and what is still left to figure out?
Hey, good morning, Josh. Well, police are now offering a $10,000 award for any information that leads to an arrest. Now, police say the suspect got on an e-bike and disappeared into Central Park. We do know that police are going to be looking at the video around the park very closely, hoping to identify the suspect. These are Brian Thompson's terrifying last moments just before 7 o'clock Wednesday morning in Midtown Manhattan. The CEO of UnitedHealthcare heading to an investor meeting when this masked man dressed in black with a gray backpack comes up behind him, firing his gun.
He appeared to wait for his intended target.
These surveillance videos and pictures capturing the shooter as he ran through Ziegfeld alleyway. NYPD says he hopped on an e-bike heading up 6th Avenue and into Central Park. The suspect left behind a water bottle and 2 power bar wrappers. There's also a cell phone on scene police believe may have been linked to the shooter. This morning, the New York Post reporting there were messages written on the shell casings left behind on the scene. The messages allegedly saying, quote, deny, depose, and defend. Thompson was named UnitedHealthcare CEO in 2021 and had been with the company for 2 decades. The Minnesota native was in town, set to share information about a profitable 2025 for the 4th largest public company in the country. Detectives believe this had been long planned. Thompson's wife, Paulette, told NBC News, quote, there had been some threats. Basically, I don't know, a lack of coverage. I don't know details. I just know that he said there were some people who had been threatening him. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz says his state law enforcement will do whatever they can to help with the investigation.
To figure out what was behind this and follow through, making sure someone's brought to justice, but just our deepest condolences to the family. Horrible tragedy.
And NYPD is stressing that every indication shows that this was a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack. Now, we are seeing some reports that the parent company for UnitedHealthcare was aware of some threats against high-level executives. We are working to get some more information as this investigation continues. Live in Midtown Manhattan, Haley Fixler, back to you, Josh.
Yeah, a lot left to figure out here. Haley, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. And as we do continue to gather more details on all of this, we will be checking in with our Fox 5 New York team as well as Fox News as that information does start to come in. Now, we did hear very briefly from someone who said that he heard the shots as they were fired. He spoke for about 30 seconds or so describing it to a reporter.
I hear the 3 shots. I was parking down there in the car. I hear 3 shots. Yeah, and then when I looked, there's a man down. Yeah. Yeah, and then the guy crossed and then he ran. He's a white male, all in black, with a backpack. He crossed this way. That ought to see. And then I called 911. But yeah, maybe someone else already called. But the guy, he was here in this corner the whole night. Yeah.
Who was on the corner?
The guy who shot the guy.
Was standing across the street?
He's standing here, this corner.
Oh, terrifying moments there. And as we get more on the investigation, we will bring it to you right here on Live Now from Fox. The time 6:21 on the East Coast and 3:21 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here for the next couple hours to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and across the world. Do have to head to a quick break, but we'll have much more live coverage as events are kicking off here coming up in just a few. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, and I do want to go international as the political crisis in South Korea appears to be calming down. Tuesday, the president declared, then lifted martial law, and the legislature was against him. Fox's chief foreign correspondent Trey Yingst is in Seoul, South Korea with that.
Demonstrators marched through the streets of Seoul, calling for their country's president to step down.
I woke up in the middle of the night to hear the news, and I thought I was dreaming. It was just hard to believe this happened in our country in the 21st century.
President Yoon is facing possible impeachment proceedings after reversing a surprise martial law decree, which the country's parliament unanimously rejected.
He is not in his right mind. His judgment and situational awareness are not normal.
Wednesday afternoon, protesters remained outside of the National Assembly building. They gave speeches, chanted, and called for accountability.
You can hear in the voices of the crowd, they say they will stay here until President Yoon steps down.
American officials continue to monitor the tension in South Korea, with the State Department urging U.S. citizens to avoid gatherings, pointing out that the situation remains fluid. Secretary of State Antony Blinken looking to avoid damage to the relationship with one of America's key allies in the Asia-Pacific region.
We're obviously watching the developments very closely. This is one of our closest partners and allies around the world. We welcome President Yoon's statement withdrawing the martial law order.
South Korean lawmakers are expected to vote on impeaching their president later this week. Reporting from Seoul, South Korea, Trey Yingst, Fox News.
And we will keep an eye on that situation as it does continue to develop. You are taking a live look outside of Al-Aqsa Hospital. This is over in Gaza as we get to the latest coming in out of the Middle East at this hour. Israeli military forces recovering the remains of an October 7th hostage as it ramped up airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Anna Eliopoulos takes us there with the latest.
More funerals in Gaza as Israel ramps up its airstrikes across the region.
There's no safe place at all. Not your house, not the street, nowhere at all. There's no safety.
The latest assault tore through a coastal tent city in the south. Israeli officials say they were targeting senior Hamas militants and took precautions to minimize harm to civilians. But Palestinian health officials say dozens were wounded and killed, including children.
We were sitting safely, and then it was like doomsday, and my brothers, my father, and my brother's children were martyred.
This comes as Israel's new defense minister told soldiers at a military airbase Wednesday the intense attacks could lead them closer to a hostage deal. Hamas continues to hold some 100 hostages inside Gaza, though roughly a third of them are believed to be dead. The remains of one of those hostages, Itai Zversky, returned home this week thanks to an IDF recovery mission.
Israel remains focused on returning the hostages back to their loved ones and delivering justice to the monsters who torment them.
Meanwhile, some worry Israel's ceasefire deal with Hezbollah is in danger as the IDF continues bombing militant strongholds in southern Lebanon. When asked, White House officials brushed off concerns.
The ceasefire is holding. Israel and Hezbollah, through the Lebanese government, wanted and continue to want the ceasefire.
Here at home, President-elect Trump continues pushing for a ceasefire and hostage release deal before his inauguration. He's already sent his incoming Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, to Qatar and Israel to kickstart talks. In New York, Anna Eliopoulos, Fox News.
And looking a little bit deeper into that, once again, you are taking this look outside of Al-Aqsa Hospital at this hour that is over in Gaza. Qatar is resuming its role as the key mediator in striking a ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and the Hamas terror group. Qatar abandoned that role just weeks ago, but the prime minister reportedly met with President-elect Donald Trump's incoming Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff. Witkoff traveled to Qatar and Israel to begin efforts to reach a truce, as Trump has said he wants a deal in effect by the time that he takes office January 20th. Dr. Asaf Romarowski, a friend of the show, is the executive director of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, joining us now live to discuss. Thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to join us and help break this down. Of course, there are a variety of updates that we get pretty much on an hourly basis.
Yes, indeed. Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, want to ask you some questions about the comments that have been made by Qatar. We know the Prime Minister did actually speak with Sky News and said essentially that we saw Trump's envoy repeat the comments that Trump had made, that he wants that hostage release deal to be in effect and the hostages to be released by the time he takes office on January 20th. So I have to ask, is that realistic? Is that an actual possibility as we are just a month and a half away?
Well, so let's contextualize it. Prior to, Witkoff going to the region, as you reported and we've spoken about, Trump made this comment about the fact that if the hostages are not released, to quote, Trump, that, all hell will break loose and basically, be warned because I'm coming into office on January 20th. I think that, obviously, everybody's watching these comments. I think that, and they're on alert. I think that there has been a sense that, from the Israelis' perspective as well, that there's been a lot of pressure on Israel to kind of fight this war since the beginning of the war with kind of one hand behind their backs. Now Trump is saying that obviously he's going to stand with them and is not going to be an obstacle in Israel's objective of winning the war. The timetable, obviously is, as always, may not be aligned. That is the U.S. timetable with the Israeli timetable. Israel is fighting a war on, the multi-front war on Iran here on 7-8 fronts. And so while there's a desire to make this happen, it may not exactly happen, between now and January 20th. I think that the unknown when it comes to Donald Trump is putting many of U.S. adversaries on notice that Donald Trump indeed is serious about making this happen and is not going to, pause and allow these kind of diplomacy talks that have, kind of push the Israelis backwards in their military objective. So I think that, yes, it's an aspirational goal. I think the fact that there's being put pressure to make this happen, and the fact that Israel is finding every day now through forensic evidence, more evidence of assassination of hostages and more information, about dead bodies and whatnot, that is definitely ratcheting up the pressure inside of Israel, as you and I have discussed, because every day that goes by, this is costing Israeli lives. And so I think that there's definitely pressure to make this happen, do this as soon as possible. And that's the hope. When it comes to the Qataris, I mean, again, I don't think Qatar should have a free reign here or get like a pass. The Emir is walking around. He was just in the UK making a visit. There's been pressure on the Qataris. Let's not forget that Qatar funded and has been complacent with 10-7. To tell you about how nervous they are, of course, once Trump was elected, they kicked out the Hamas leadership out of Doha, and of course, now they're in Turkey. But we still need to they can't have it both ways. There still has to be consequences for Qatar's ongoing involvement with funding 10-7. So while they're trying to play it both ways vis-a-vis the hostages and the negotiations, there has to be serious consequences there as well.
Is it a positive sign, a good sign, that this Israeli delegation is supposedly going over to Egypt next week to talk a little bit more about the hostage release deal, that ceasefire? Would you say overall that that is a positive sign, even though we've seen those delegations head to different locations in Qatar and Egypt a lot over the past several months?
I think it is a positive. I think we also have to understand the politics behind all of this. There's no doubt that, yes, our American electoral results and the results of the election here have definitely played also into the Egyptians being, once again, more malleable, more friendly. And of course, let's not forget that the entire oxygen of Egypt oxygen of Hamas, has come through the tunnels coming in from Egypt. So Egypt, too, is not clean in this regard. And there has to be consequences there, too. But they, too, are an ally of the United States. So I think that they're trying to make this happen. I think that the current administration, as it relates to Biden, Hochstein, Blinken, et al., they are all wanting to get a win, whatever it looks like, between now and the 20th, to show that over the past year, we've gotten to some kind of common, we've had a victory on our side. Again, that may not be aligned together with the Israeli timetable. It's not to say that the Israelis are not going to try to make this happen, but as far as the ongoing context, we are negotiating with Islamist terrorist organization that only wish ill on the state of Israel and the United States. And from their perspective, any prolonging of the war is a victory for them. All Hamas wants to do is come out of the tunnels a day after tomorrow and say, look, we survived this. We're still around, notwithstanding the fact that positively Israel has devastated Hamas close to 90%, but they are still being armed. And again, that's the concern as far as these artery of armaments that are coming in, whether from the Egyptian side, the Iranian side. And so the pressure is ratcheting up the focus indeed on the hostages. Just this week, we learned about, the killing of Omer Natura, whose body is, still being held as the body itself as a pawn in Gaza. But yet again, another American citizen who was a victim of this war itself, like Hirsch Palin, again, should remind us that American blood is on Hamas's hands. So this is, again, all part of the symptoms of this larger problem and should help with the pressure. And the hope is that maybe they do get something, again, in preparation for the incoming administration, that there is some kind of win on this administration's side as it relates to some kind of smooth transition between Biden and Trump in January 20th.
What you're looking at on your screen right now is actually a live look over Khan Yunis there in Gaza. And the IDF saying that their military investigation found that those 6 hostages whose bodies were recovered in Khan Yunis back in August were likely killed by Hamas terrorists as Israeli soldiers approached them. Does this kind of show that there's maybe truth to the reports that Sinwar told the terrorists to execute any hostages if IDF troops got close?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think that there's no doubt that the marching orders he left his brother and all, the disciples of Hamas is to make this happen. I mean, if you read Sinwar's writings today and the writings that he was writing while in jail in Israel, the hostage and hijacking tactic was directly coming out of his playbook. I mean, remember, we're talking about here a culture of death. That they spare and they could care less about Israeli lives, American lives. Any blood spilled is a win on their side. And so from the perspective of Hamas and the Islamist narrative, this is only glorifying their larger message and their larger objectives as it relates to what they define, quote, the eradication of the Zionist entity. So they have no problem with any of this. And that was indeed the concern. You and I have discussed this in the past on the show that, we've seen we've seen carrots being put out by the Israelis as far as paying for information and whatnot. While these earthly carrots, as they are described by Hamas, the Hamas writings actually forbid that. They're basically saying, no, let's not work with the enemy. Let's, glorify our own agenda and continue this war by terrorizing them and doing what we were mandated to do. So there's no doubt that, the hope on the Israeli side, and still is, that the disarray that was created by the taking out of the Hamas leadership, Sinwar, Diaf, and others who were running the show, but in particular, Sinwar, who was the mastermind of 10-7, that during that disarray, people would jump on the opportunity of taking monies and get a free pass to leave Gaza. I think that that's still a potential for some, but the pressure has been coming on as it's been to utilize the civilian neighborhood, such as they are, in order to galvanize exactly this internal message that whatever societal aspect is in Gaza is complacent 100% with Hamas. And so that's all part of this playbook of Hamas, which they are following to a T.
What do we think about the humanitarian aid overall entering into that area? Because that's been a topic that's been discussed. We've had Israel accused of holding back that humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza, but then we have a lot of pictures, videos, things that pop up that show truck after truck entering in. So is Israel withholding aid, or are they trying to get aid in as quickly as possible?
No, they are trying to get aid as quickly as possible. And let's be clear here, more aid has gone into Gaza post 10/7 than it was pre 10/7. Let's also understand the actors here. The main complacent actor that has been responsible for the aid in Gaza is UNRWA. UNRWA is Hamas. While UNRWA has been trying to play it both ways and argue that they are a humanitarian organization and they have diplomatic immunity, they are, it has been proven time and time again that UNRWA workers who have been aid workers, teachers, doctors, civil, so-called, civil servants of the Gazan population. They have been complacent. They are Hamas. We have evidence they've been holding hostages. And so UNRWA denies all of that. And UNRWA is the gatekeeper of the maintenance of Arab Palestinian refugees. They have been the largest recipient of aid from the United States. It was under the Trump administration that aid to UNRWA was the monies to UNRWA were frozen under Nikki Haley, which was very positive. And to my mind, UNRWA should not be part of the day after tomorrow. We need to root UNRWA out of the entire arena altogether. And in tandem now, Israel recognized in a very monumental move that they passed a law that UNRWA is indeed Hamas. So they are indeed considered by the Israelis a terror abating group, and they should be removed from the scene. On the other hand, UNRWA officials and UN officials, Anthony Guterres and others, as you've been seeing by all these videos you've been mentioning, they've been giving press conferences in Europe and other places saying that Israel is to blame for all of this. The fact of the matter is that the aid goes in, Hamas steals the aid, and they're the ones who are, abusing their own population. And because UNRWA and Hamas are one and the same, then they're basically one hand is feeding the other. There's no surprise here by this architecture, but the blame is not on Israel. This is exactly part of the tactic that they're trying to put the blame and come out with these statements as far as starvation and famine, things that are not even remotely close to the truth, but they play into the propagandist galvanized arm of Hamas that is still operating very, very well and utilizing entities like the United Nations and like UNRWA and others to put out their messages.
All right, Dr. Asaf Romarowski, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and break it all down. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
No, I'm good for now. Obviously, things are changing on an hourly basis as always, but I appreciate your time.
Of course, I appreciate you. And we are taking a live look right now over Khan Yunis there in Gaza as we will continue to follow the latest updates coming in out of the Middle East. The time now 6:41 on the East Coast and 3:41 on the West Coast. Do have to head to a quick break, but a lot more live coverage coming up in a matter of minutes. You're watching Live Now from Fox. My name is Josh Breslow, and we will be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, and I do want to get back into some of our top stories at this hour as New York City Mayor Eric Adams is facing backlash from some Democrats for aligning himself with some of the policies of President-elect Donald Trump, among them being open to deporting migrants who commit crimes. Fox 5 New York's Morgan Mackay takes a closer look at where the mayor stands on the issues.
President Biden and President-elect Donald Trump now agree on one thing. The Biden Justice Department has been politicized.
Mayor Eric Adams reading this line from the New York Times, emphasizing that it proves his argument that the federal corruption charges brought against him were politically motivated.
Rest my case.
Ever since the indictment was unsealed, Adams has insisted that he became a target of the Biden administration after he openly criticized their handling of the migrant crisis. But now, with President-elect Donald Trump set to take office in about a month, Adams, in a rare move, took this opportunity to reference the charges he is facing.
Every day before I do off topics, my lawyer said, "Don't you do it. I can't answer and defend myself." That's the hardest thing.
But Adams' comments are making waves among Republicans, with conservatives posting clips of Adams embracing the incoming administration. Elon Musk even reposting this clip of Adams blasting Democrats like former President Barack Obama for being too afraid to speak out about the migrant crisis.
In the era of cancel culture, no one is afraid to be honest about the truth. Well, cancel me, because I'm going to protect the people of this city.
But while Adams leans into a new Trump administration, other Democrats are making moves. State Assemblywoman Karina Reyes introducing a bill to enshrine parts of the Sanctuary City Ordinance into state law. She says to protect undocumented immigrants who are only looking to receive city services.
I think some of the comments are misinformed. The moment you kind of deputize state and city agencies to do the work of ICE, it just makes it more difficult for that work, the mission of the agencies, whatever that may be, it may be law enforcement, to operate to its full capacity.
Now, Adams is also working to set up meetings with incoming Trump administration officials. Reporting from the newsroom, I'm Morgan Mackay, Fox 5 News.
Morgan, thank you so much. And of course, we will continue to follow all of that as we do here on Live Now from Fox. You are taking a live look on the left-hand side of your screen right there. That is a live look over New York City. We're also following a big story out of there involving the killing of the UnitedHealthcare CEO. It happened nearly 24 hours ago, and the manhunt is still underway for the killer. We will have live coverage here all throughout the day on Live Now from Fox. As we get updates, you will be the first to know if you're watching us here. Do have to head to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour now at 6:47 on the East Coast and 3:47 on the West Coast. On the other side of the break, we are going to head out live over to the United Kingdom. That is where we do have Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressing a crowd here in a fairly lengthy speech. That's coming up in 2 short minutes. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. As I mentioned before the break, we do prioritize live events here on Live Now from Fox, and we have UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who is delivering his Plan for Change speech. This is over in Buckinghamshire. Do want to pop up the audio so we can listen in.
For about half an hour, 45 minutes ago, a little apprehensive, but you absolutely nailed it there, Bliss. Well done. And what an amazing contribution you're already making to our country, so thank you for that. And as Anne said, it is really great to be here at the iconic Pinewood Studios, the spiritual home of Britain's film industry. And, you know, the leader of the opposition thinks that if you do a couple of shifts in McDonald's, then you can become working class. So by that logic, if I keep coming back here, I could be the next James Bond. But this really is an incredible place. I'm sure you felt it when you came in. Countless Oscars produced here. An engine of growth which supports 8,000 jobs. And more than that, a beacon to the world of British creative brilliance. So I'm delighted to be here to launch our plan for change. Because this is about who we are as a nation. How do we project our values, fight for our values, show our strength in an ever more volatile world, but also to show to the British people that their country can still do great things. And to be honest, not just great things, things that they should be able to take for granted, the basic functions of the state. Take the NHS mentioned earlier, because perhaps more than any other institution, it represents the bigger us. Millions owe everything to it, and 2 of them are here. My family, of course, no difference. I know I've said this before, but I would not be here without the NHS. It's the reason my mum was able to have children when she was first told, aged 11, that that would never happen. And that's because the NHS never gave up on her. And behind every single door in this country, there's a family with their own version of these stories. And yet here we are. The NHS, even the NHS, losing the trust of the British public. Record dissatisfaction. Unable to provide the timely care and dignity that Britain relies on. A precious contract between the state and the people, broken. Broken by public services in crisis, unable to perform their basic functions. Broken by an economy that leaves millions working harder just to stand still. And broken by politicians who promised change and never delivered. Broken, but not beyond repair. Because one thing the British people do know in their bones is that this is a great nation. No matter how tough things are for their family and their community, they know that. And they're right. Because they recognise it in themselves. After all, in the last 14 years, they tightened their belts when they were told, we're all in it together. They closed ranks to defeat a deadly virus. And they never once wavered in their commitment to stand with Ukraine. And all they asked for in return was a government to meet them halfway. And there's hope in that. The hope of a government finally able to match their ambition with a credible plan for unlocking their potential. A great nation, rediscovering it can do great things. Renewing that contract with the people, delivering the change that they voted for. But that's the catch, isn't it? The purpose of this government is to make our public services and our economy work for working people. Strengthen our country in a world that increasingly preys on weakness. It's a cause that demands nothing less than the full power of government. Yet that's precisely what's broken, isn't it? As I've said a number of times, fixing the foundations is like finding damp in your wall. You can paint over it and get the hairdryer out and dry it. All done that. Hope it goes away. Or you can strip it out, rip out the plaster, and deal with the problem once and for all. But unless we fundamentally reform the way government goes about its business, unless we first change how we try to change the country, then the hairdryer is all we've got. And this is a big job. Prisons overflowing, the NHS on its knees, a £22 billion black hole in our public finances, which, to put that in context, is nearly half of what we spend on defence of our country. Now, I don't want to use that as an excuse. I expect to be judged on my ability to deal with it. And the work of change has begun. £25 billion invested in the NHS. Asylum returns up 53%. The minimum wage raised by a record amount. Stabilising the economy. Fixing the foundation. Clearing up the mess so we can take the country forward with our missions. Now that doesn't happen by accident. There's no investment in our public services without difficult decisions. No solution to the housing crisis without approving controversial development. And no taking our country forward without levelling with you honestly about the trade-offs we must face together. Now, the path of change is long, it's hard, there are a few thanks in the short term. But mark my words, with this plan for change, we will stick to it. Country first, party second. So in that country first spirit, we change our plan. A plan for change, a plan that does two things at the same time. First, it doubles down on our national missions. A strategy that, for all the turbulence of the world around us, has remained robust since we published it nearly 2 years ago. A strategy that will give the government and the nation, whether in calm or choppy waters, the stabilising certainty of the clear destination. Guide us towards a decade of national renewal. Yes, some will say, we've heard these missions before. Where's the rabbit out the hat? In Westminster, they always say that. But I make no apologies for sticking to our plan. And no apologies for fixing the eyes of Whitehall. Not on the distraction of Westminster, but on the long-term good of our country. However, to drive those missions forward in this Parliament and show our progress towards them, today we publish new milestones. Measurable.
All right, you are listening there to Keir Starmer. He is the UK Prime Minister. Wanted to dip into that as it is live, raw, and unfiltered right here on Live Now from Fox. That is over in Buckinghamshire, and he is delivering his address on his quote-unquote plan for change. In the meantime, we do have Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who is speaking right now. So I do want to pop up the audio so we can listen in. It looks like there is a camera that is over in the hallway, kind of walking in to where he is going to be speaking. Not sure if that has started just yet, but you can see camera folks are getting in place, and there is Blinken there. Let's pop up the audio to see what we can hear.
Everyone, and I'm so pleased to be able to spend time with colleagues from civil society, from Ukraine, from Azerbaijan, from Belarus, from Russia. We're here at the OSCE, and a foundational premise and principle of the OSCE is that we can't separate our military, physical, and economic security from fundamental freedoms, that these go hand in hand. And in all of our countries, civil society is absolutely essential to helping us preserve, defend, and protect the basic human freedoms that matter the most. To be able to speak freely, to associate freely, to practice religion freely, to vote. And for all of the democracies, civil society is essential to holding us and holding governments accountable, to making sure that we're doing what's necessary to uphold those freedoms. And so for me, it's a very important opportunity to hear from people who are in this struggle on the front lines every single day in very challenging circumstances, but at a time when it matters more than ever. So thank you all for being here, and I'm really eager to hear from you and again hear how the United States can help support your work, which is so essential to the freedoms that we sometimes take for granted, but without which none of our societies, none of our countries will be genuinely secure. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor.
All right, that was Secretary of State Antony Blinken as he was speaking over in Malta. He is meeting with several different officials there, including, I believe, the Israeli foreign minister. So a lot of discussions that are happening. We'll bring you any news conferences that might take place as a result. Now, you are taking a live look at this hour over the White House in D.C. It is now 7 o'clock on the East Coast and 4 o'clock on the West Coast. I do want to get right back into your headlines and talk a little bit about politics as the budget axes could start swinging on Capitol Hill today. Tech titans Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy tasked by President-elect Trump to slash government spending will meet with lawmakers later on. But as Doug Luzader reports from Washington, the resistance is already digging in.
Capitol Hill today is all part of the incoming Department of Government Efficiency in an effort to cut government spending and regulations. But even Musk and Ramaswamy have their work cut out for them. Does it really cost 3 cents to make a penny? How about the Pentagon's inability to pass an audit year after year, or government buildings that are largely vacant because so many federal workers are still at home?
I think we can do at least $2 trillion.
Billionaire Elon Musk has already made some big promises for government cuts. He and former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy will be on Capitol Hill today to meet with lawmakers who are on board with the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE.
I'm really excited to be part of the DOGE caucus in the Senate.
Republican lawmakers are already lining up to be a part.
So we have the ingredients, we have the conditions right now to actually be able to make really dramatic change.
They want to meet, I'm happy to meet with them.
Even Florida Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz says he's on board with DOGE to a point.
The era of big government is over.
This won't be the first time that there has been a growing consensus to cut the government, but it is extremely difficult. Ramaswamy and Trump himself have already said that cuts to big spending drivers like Medicare and Social Security are off the table, and the bureaucracy can fight back. Already, as the Biden team is on its way out, the Social Security Administration just inked a deal with tens of thousands of its employees to work from home until 2029. And that runs counter to DOGE's efforts to get those workers back to the office. And something else that DOGE may push for, ending daylight savings time. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
Doug, thank you so much. And another big story that we have been covering over the last about 24 hours or so. I do want to warn you, this is very disturbing video as we cover the latest on the murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO. Now, the search is underway for his killer seen in that video. Again, very disturbing as we are gathering the latest from our Fox 5 New York team. We are going to check in with them for an update here momentarily. We know that we had Haley Fixler. She is a reporter who has been covering this story from the get-go. She joined us live a short time ago to break down the latest. Now, we are checking in with our Fox 5 New York team live.
In the brazen and targeted murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson.
Yeah, it happened about 24 hours or so ago. Good Day's Haley Fixler joins us from the scene in Midtown this morning as investigators, Haley, are still trying to figure out who did this and exactly why.
Hey, good morning, Kurt, Rosanna. Yeah, police are now offering a $10,000 award for any information leading to an arrest. Now, police say that the suspect was last seen getting on an e-bike and heading into Central Park. We're told the police are going to be looking at the video around the park very closely, hoping to identify the shooter.
These are Brian Thompson's terrifying last moments just before 7 o'clock Wednesday morning in Midtown Manhattan. The CEO of UnitedHealthcare heading to an investor meeting when this masked man dressed in black with a gray backpack comes up behind him, firing his gun.
He appeared to wait for his intended target.
These surveillance videos and pictures capturing the shooter as he ran through Ziegfeld alleyway. NYPD says he hopped on an e-bike heading up 6th Avenue and into Central Park. The suspect left behind a water bottle and 2 power bar wrappers. There's also a cell phone on scene police believe may have been linked to the shooter. This morning, the New York Post reporting there were messages written on the shell casings left behind on the scene. The messages allegedly saying, quote, deny, depose, and defend. Thompson was named UnitedHealthcare CEO in 2021 and had been with the company for 2 decades. The Minnesota native was in town, set to share information about a profitable 2025 for the 4th largest public company in the country. Detectives believe this had been long planned. Thompson's wife, Paulette, told NBC News, quote, there had been some threats. Basically, I don't know, a lack of coverage. I don't know details. I just know that he said there were some people who had been threatening him. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz says his state law enforcement will do whatever they can to help with the investigation.
To figure out what was behind this and follow through, making sure someone's brought to justice. But just our deepest condolences to the family. Horrible tragedy.
Now, we have also seen some reports that the parent company for UnitedHealthcare was aware of some threats against high-level executives. We are still working to get more information as this investigation continues. Live in Midtown, Haley Fixler, back to you guys.
All right, still lots to sort out. Thank you, Haley. Meanwhile, it's the 3rd day of jury deliberations in the trial of Daniel Penny.
Yesterday, the jury asked to review video from the subway car where Mr. Penny placed Mr. Jordan nearly in a chokehold. Briella Tomasetti outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. They also asked for other things as well, Briella, right?
Yeah, Rosanna and Kurt, good morning to both of you. They asked for more evidence, to look at evidence that was already shown during the trial, rather. So, yes, they asked to see the videotaped interrogation and bystander video that was shown to them. The process will continue today, but you can tell the jury is taking the case very seriously, considering they came in on a Wednesday, which was their only day off, and deliberations will continue later this morning. On day 2 of jury deliberations, Daniel Penny remained stoic, even while protesters chanted, "Convict the subway strangler," as he and his defense team left the courthouse. Demonstrators have routinely gathered outside of court since the start of the trial, and yesterday, Penny's lawyers expressed concern over disruptive protesters. Defense attorney Thomas Kenneth asked Judge Maxwell Wiley for the jury to be relocated, but Wiley denied his request and said if the situation escalates, he'll reconsider. Meanwhile, inside the courtroom, the jury asked to review evidence, including interrogation and bystander video at the heart of the chokehold case against Penny.
They're holding him down right now.
They also requested to rehear part of City Medical Examiner Cynthia Harris's testimony. When Harris initially took the stand, she reaffirmed her findings that the chokehold itself was what killed Jordan Neely and said no toxicological result imaginable was going to change her opinion. A pathologist, though hired by Penny's defense team, testified that Neely, a homeless street performer who struggled with mental health issues, died from a combination of schizophrenia, synthetic marijuana, and a genetic condition while struggling with the now 26-year-old Marine veteran.
Jordan will be 33 to my knowledge, you know what I'm saying, on December 18th. His birthday is coming up. I hope we get a verdict before that.
Jurors have shown motivation to deliberate, choosing the option to rehear part of Harris's testimony yesterday afternoon on their normal day off. The rest will be read back when court resumes this morning. Now, if the jury convicts Penny on manslaughter, which carries a punishment of up to 15 years in prison, they will not be asked to render a verdict on the less serious charge of criminally negligent homicide, which carries a sentence of 4 years behind bars at most. For now, that's the very latest. Live here in Lower Manhattan. Rosanna and Kurt, we'll send it back to you.
Briella, thank you so much. So the owner of a bodega in the Bronx was released.
All right, that is our Fox 5 New York team's live coverage here as they gather the latest details on several stories they're following closely that we have been following here on Live Now from Fox. That includes the Daniel Penny trial that does get back underway for jury deliberations. And we're also following the murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO in broad daylight there in Midtown Manhattan. A lot of questions, and we know that there was a news conference held yesterday. It is not clear just yet if there will be another one today, but we'll bring it to you live, raw, and unfiltered if there is one. It is now 7:10 on the East Coast and 4:10 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and across the world. Do want to take you out live to some of the images that we do have here. This is a shot of the White House over in D.C. As I do want to remind you that we are a month and a half away from the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump. You can watch all of the events leading up to that day, and on January 20th, we will be live, raw, and unfiltered with all of the events you'll want to see during that inauguration. Again, Live Now from Fox is where you'll want to be on January 20th there for the inauguration. Taking a live look at Capitol Hill as we remind you that later on today we will have Pete Hegseth, the former Fox News host, who is meeting with lawmakers there. He is hoping to secure their vote for Defense Secretary. He is Donald Trump's pick to lead the Pentagon there. However, at this point, there's a lot of controversy surrounding that nomination, and there are questions about what will happen next. We also know that reports are indicating that Trump has spoken with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis about that position. Again, a lot left up in the air, so we'll keep you posted right here on Live Now from Fox. We also have this live image right here coming in out of New York City. That is the Christmas tree outside of the Fox studios. Important to note that we are still following the latest on the murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO. An expert, a former NYPD detective, will join us here in just about 20 minutes to break down everything we know about the situation as information is slowly coming in. That manhunt underway and a reward being offered for any information that leads to the capture of the killer. Do have to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, the first one of the hour, but a lot more news to get to in just a few. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, and I do want to get back into our coverage of top stories as we continue to cover the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, especially over in North Carolina. Now, some families in Western North Carolina wondering where they're going to spend the Christmas holiday after losing everything in the hurricane. People have lost their homes and cars, as you can see in that video there, but a few families are getting a hand ahead of the holidays. Fox's Chelsea Torres was out there and filed this report.
One mom lost her home from Helene and didn't have anywhere to go. But this week, she was gifted an RV, and that RV was fully stocked with food and even Christmas presents. Helene destroyed part of Lindsay Miller's home.
I had me and my two little boys who are looking up to me, you know, and I didn't know what to do.
The Miller family stayed in their car and with friends while trying to figure out their next move.
We'll just stay wherever we can. Like, I have a couple friends, and then we stayed in a hotel room and just bounce. And then sometimes we'll go and stay in the house because I didn't have anywhere.
Miller's home has no power or heat. And through a friend, she heard about the nonprofit Emergency RV. The group works with donors to get new campers for victims of Helene. So Miller applied, hoping she'd spend Christmas with her own roof over her head.
That we are able to provide not only homes, but I feel like we're able to provide a lot of hope. I don't feel like hope is something that a lot of people have right now.
Emergency RV posted Miller's story on social media, and Heather Gibbs, wife of former NASCAR driver Coy Gibbs, felt she had to help.
I'm going to make it as easy as it is I can for her and everything that she's gone through, everything her kids have gone through, and I want them to know that people haven't forgot.
Miller says she's amazed at the generosity.
We don't have to have a cold Christmas, you know. I didn't know where we was going to spend our Christmas. This has really been a big impact on my family.
Emergency RV says they have over 700 people just here in Western North Carolina on their wait list. They tell me they need donations and volunteers to help deliver those RVs to people in need. In Hendersonville, North Carolina, Chelsea Torres, Fox News.
Chelsea, thank you so much for that report. And another story we have been following very closely as jury selection will start in a civil trial after the death of Tyrese Sampson. He was killed after falling off a ride at Icon Park, and his family is suing the company that manufactured that ride. Morgan Parrish with our Fox 35 Orlando team joining us live from the Orange County Courthouse in Florida. And Morgan, my understanding is that the family is going to be there today for jury selection as it does begin.
Good morning. That's correct. So court starts at 8:45 this morning, and we know that the family is here to finally seek some closure. But this incident happened 3 years ago when 14-year-old Tyrese Sampson was on vacation back in March of 2022. That's when he fell 100 feet off the Orlando freefall ride at Icon Park. And this is the video that shows a teen on the ride moments before it took off. A state investigation found his seat was manually adjusted to accommodate his size, and then he slipped through the restraints as the ride was coming down. The state fined the ride's owners $250,000, and they agreed to remove it.
His life was just going to be so amazing. So he had full potentials to be whatever he wanted to be: doctor, astronaut, lawyer.
And Sampson's family settled cases with Icon Park and the ride's operators in March 2023. This trial is against the Austria-based company Funtime. The family's suit alleges the ride was unreasonably dangerous and didn't use the safest seats, among other complaints. Now, we have reached out to Funtime, but they haven't responded to our request yet for a comment. And again, like I said, jury selection starts at 8:45 this morning. Sampson's mom is going to be here this time, and she has a different attorney, but the family tells us they don't plan on speaking until after the trial. So, of course, we are going to stay on top of this and continue to bring you the latest updates. We're now reporting live from the Orange County courtroom. I'm Morgan Parrish, Fox 35 News.
All right, Morgan, thank you so much for that report, and we'll definitely keep in touch as that story does progress. Again, jury selection expected to take place a little bit later on this morning. The time now, 7:19 on the East Coast and 4:19 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here for the next couple hours to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and the world. Do have to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, though, and on the other side, we'll get right back into our top stories and live events. You're watching Live Now from Fox. Much more to come. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 721 on the East Coast and 421 on the West Coast. Do want to get back into a big story that we have been following over the past several days here. This is the murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO. And as you can see on your screen, this is disturbing video, so viewer discretion is advised. And it was obtained by our Fox 5 New York team. It shows the gunman who police are still looking for nearly 24 hours later. Again, this is an active investigation, so we have been following it from the get-go, and this was over in Midtown Manhattan, again, just about 24 hours ago. Connor Hansen with Fox News has been out there gathering the latest details.
A shocking murder happening right here on this sidewalk behind me in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. Police are now searching for a suspect in what they're calling a targeted killing. An all-out manhunt Wednesday in New York City for the suspect who gunned down the CEO of UnitedHealthcare. Brian Thompson was shot and killed outside a hotel where he was set to speak to investors.
I want to be clear. At this time, every indication is that this was a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack.
Police say a masked gunman shot Thompson in the back before fleeing on foot and then riding an electric bike to nearby Central Park. The 50-year-old executive was rushed to a nearby hospital but did not survive. The NYPD says it doesn't have a clear motive for the shooting.
It appears the suspect was lying in wait for several minutes. And as the victim was walking to the conference hotel, the suspect approached from behind and fired several rounds.
Police say the gun jammed before the suspect cleared it and started firing again.
At the scene, we recover 3 live 9mm rounds and 3 discharged 9mm shell casings.
We have the drones up, we have aviation out, we have K9 out.
Thompson did not have a security detail with him, and his wife told NBC News he previously received threats but did not alter his travel plans. In New York, Connor Hansen, Fox News.
Connor, thank you. And this is, of course, a photo there provided by UnitedHealthcare of the victim. That is video from the scene, as this investigation is still a very active one. I do want to bring in Michael Alcazar, retired NYPD detective and hostage negotiator. He's an adjunct professor over at John Jay College of Criminal Justice and a great friend of the show here. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and help discuss this a little bit further.
Good morning, Josh.
Now, as a retired NYPD detective, I do want to ask your initial thoughts as these details start to come out and you realize kind of what transpired here.
Yeah, pretty unusual. I don't think I've ever investigated an assassination in broad daylight. I was too young when John Lennon happened, so I thought it was pretty brazen to happen like early in the morning when everybody's going to work. You know, and then of course when we see the video and what they recovered, I'm interested to see what this perpetrator's motive is once we apprehend him.
And I do want to ask, because obviously you have some questions talking about the motive. Are there any other questions that you have that you hope maybe we'll get some answers from police about in the coming hours or days?
Well, I just recently read that the spent shells and the live rounds that they recovered had words etched on them. So I would like to know what they did so far with those words. Did they link that to any letters or electronic correspondence with the victim, with the organization? Have they identified any customers of the insurance company that have been denied claims? So, you know, there's a lot. There's a lot I'm thinking of right now because that news just broke.
Want to talk more about the area where the crime happened, the crime scene there over in Midtown Manhattan. Can you tell me about that area overall?
Yeah, that's a busy area. I mean, early in the morning, you'll just have people going to work, but during the middle of the day, it's a heavy tourist spot, right? The Ziegfeld Theater's right there, Central Park's right there, Radio City's right there. So definitely dense with, you know, citizens. So unusual spot. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're canvassing, of course, they're canvassing for video surveillance if in the past few days, because this guy, I would think, has staked out this location, been familiar with it, identified escape routes, you know, where he's going to travel, if he's going to dip into Central Park. So I would like to find out if the NYPD has identified any witnesses that might have seen him at the location, of course, during the crime and before. So that would lead to good clues to help identify the suspect.
And that was going to be my next question here, because we're talking about a murder that took place in broad daylight. So you have to imagine that there are at least some of the witnesses out there. Is there any grasp on how the shooter was able to get away here without being caught, as, again, that is a busy area, and I'm sure there were a lot of witnesses?
Yeah, I mean, listen, New Yorkers, you know, they're street savvy. So when this shooting occurred, I'm sure they all just ran away. But you know, it was still kind of early in the morning. If you see in a video, there was only that one person, that one woman with the coffee at the location. So other people probably scattered. So you know, people get scared. This guy took off in his bike. Perhaps people, you know, recorded him on their phones. Maybe some brave New Yorker followed them just to help police, but not surprising. I mean, yeah, when a crime scene happens, people scatter. So I'm sure people saw him, but I'm sure they were, you know, thinking of self-preservation first.
How pivotal will the public and those witnesses be in tracking this person down?
Yeah, 100%. We have his images all over the place, right? It's being distributed throughout the country. We had a Crime Stoppers tip. Many of our cases, many of our homicides, we rely on witnesses and citizens to give us good tips. Somebody will probably be able to identify him by the way he walked, his gait, his super expensive backpack, his clothing. I don't think that clothing he bought just for the purpose of committing this assassination. I'm sure it's something personal to him because, you know, they look like expensive clothes. So somebody's going to be motivated by the reward, and they can probably identify him, you know, by his partial face, his mask. I'm confident that people have already given tips to the NYPD, and they probably have identified the suspect, and they're probably looking for him right now.
The NYPD, as you mentioned, does get a lot of tips. We've seen the nationwide attention to this story as it broke. There was information flowing all over the place on social media itself. So I guess, does the NYPD prioritize cases like this that have national attention, or do they kind of give every case the same treatment?
I mean, there's basic investigative steps that we conduct for every homicide, but because this is a newsworthy, I wouldn't be surprised if they created a task force, a homicide task force, so that they can make an arrest, apprehend, detect, identify the suspect immediately. So yeah, it's all hands on deck. My poor friends have been working since yesterday. They probably haven't gone home yet. So yeah, they definitely gave it more focus because it happened in broad daylight. It's newsworthy. So for sure, they have more detectives, more homicide detectives working on this case.
And I'm hoping you can provide some insight here, because the Rockefeller Christmas tree lighting still took place. It's not far away, of course. So how does the NYPD go about determining if it's safe to hold a huge event like that when you do have a situation that just transpired there?
To me, that tells me that they're confident that they have information. They said right away that it was targeted. So they might have information that we're not privy to yet, that they haven't disclosed to the media. So they were confident that this was a lone gunman that targeted this particular victim. And, with the Christmas tree lighting, they didn't want to deter citizens from and tourists from enjoying and living their lives. I'm sure they saturated the area with uniformed personnel, undercovers, omnipresence, and I'm sure they had video surveillance to make sure that the suspect doesn't come back. I mean, as a New Yorker, I would still be concerned because there is an assassin out there with his weapon. But for most New Yorkers, that's probably par for the course. They're very savvy, they're vigilant, they're always watching out for bad characters. So it's nothing unusual for New Yorkers.
As you mentioned, police came out very quickly and said this was a targeted attack. They were very quick to say that. So how do you feel overall about the flow of information to the public here? Because it seems as though the information came out fairly quickly and there was a lot of detail.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much more information they have, right? They provided for us what they want us to know. So I believe they're close to an apprehension. I believe that they already have a suspect identified. So a good work on them. I predicted yesterday that identify him yesterday. I don't know if that's the case, but I know that my friends and my colleagues and the detectives of the NYPD are the best in the world, and they're going to come to hopefully a peaceful resolution and make the arrest of this individual soon.
All right, Michael Alcazar there, retired NYPD detective. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and break it all down. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
Yeah, just everyone stay vigilant, stay safe in New York. It's the season where everything happens right now. So just keep your head on a swivel and remain safe.
All right, thank you again for taking the time to be here with us.
Thanks, Josh.
And of course, that is the victim right there on your screen. He is the UnitedHealthcare CEO, and the investigation does continue. Now, we are not clear just yet if there will be another update from officials, NYPD, or any city officials at any point today. But if there is, we will make sure to bring it to you right here on Live Now from Fox. In the meantime, though, police did give a very brief update yesterday. I do want to play that for you here on Live Now from Fox.
And at least once in the right calf. Many people passed the suspect, but he appeared to wait for his intended target. The suspect fled, first on foot, then on an e-bike, and was last seen in Central Park on Center Drive early this morning. The victim was removed to Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced. We've been in touch with his family, his friends, and his colleagues, and they are very much in our thoughts and prayers at this hour. The full investigative efforts of the New York City Police Department are well underway, and we will not rest until we identify and apprehend the shooter in this case. The women and men of the NYPD take enormous pride in the work that they do each day and each night to drive down crime and violence in our city. Right now, we are asking the public for your help. If you have any information about this case, call Crime Stoppers at 800-577-TIPS. We have increased the reward in this case to $10,000. I want to be clear. At this time, every indication is that this was a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack. Millions of people will be enjoying the tree lighting tonight, among other holiday events, and the NYPD will be out there with them, keeping them safe. For some preliminary details about today's tragic incident, I pass it over to our Chief of Detectives, Chief Joe Kenny.
Thank you, Commissioner. The information I'm about to give you is preliminary as our investigation is continuing. This morning at 6:46 a.m., patrol officers from Midtown North Precinct responded to a 911 call of a person shot in front of the Hilton Hotel located at 1335 Avenue of the Americas. This is between West 53rd Street and West 54th Street. At 6:48 a.m., officers arrive and find the victim, Brian R. Thompson, a 50-year-old male, on the sidewalk in front of the Hilton with gunshot wounds to his back and leg. Mr. Thompson was removed by EMS to Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 7:12 a.m. Mr. Thompson is the CEO of UnitedHealthcare and resides in Minnesota. Detectives from Night Watch, Midtown North Detective Squad, and Manhattan South Homicide responded to the scene and began their investigation. What we know is that the shooter arrived at the location on foot about 5 minutes prior to the victim's arrival. He stands alongside the building line as numerous other people and pedestrians pass him by. From video, we see at 6:44 a.m., the victim is walking alone towards the Hilton after exiting his hotel across the street. We believe the victim was headed to the Hilton Hotel to attend the United Health Group Investors Conference that was scheduled to start at 8 a.m. The shooter appears to be a light-skinned male. He's wearing a light brown or cream-colored jacket, a black face mask, black and white sneakers, and a very distinctive gray backpack. The shooter steps onto the sidewalk from behind the car. He ignores numerous other pedestrians, approaches the victim from behind, and shoots him in the back. The shooter then walks toward the victim and continues to shoot. It appears that the gun malfunctions as he clears the jam and begins to fire again. The shooter then flees on foot northbound into an alleyway between 54th Street and 55th Street. Once at West 55th Street, the shooter continues to walk westbound on the Avenue of the Americas, where he gets onto an electric e-city bike and rides northbound on the Avenue of Americas towards Central Park, where at 6:48 a.m. we have the shooter riding this bike into Central Park at Center Drive. At the scene, we recover 3 live 9mm rounds and 3 discharged 9mm shell casings. The motive for this murder currently is unknown, but based on the evidence we have so far, it does appear that the victim was specifically targeted, but at this point we do not know why. This does not appear to be a random act of violence. We are seeking information from the public to help identify the shooter. As the Commissioner said, we have upped the reward up to $10,000 for information. You're urged to contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-577-TIPS. All information will be kept anonymous. Thank you very much.
All right, well, we're going to open up to a couple of questions. We're going to start off with Shimon, CNN.
So it's about an hour and 20 minutes before the start of the conference. Is there any indication that he was going to meet someone? Because it's pretty early. Is he on his way to meet someone there at the conference?
He leaves the hotel dressed like he's going to be attending the conference. We're working with his co-workers and other people that he planned on attending the conference with to get that information. But as of right now, he's in charge of the conference, so we believe he was getting there to help set up.
And then just the city bike, if I may. Do we know where that city bike is now? Does he dock it or does he keep riding it?
We're still tracking video. The last we see with him on that bike is in Central Park.
Is there a way to track that bike?
There are GPSs on those bikes. We'll be working with the company.
All right, we're going to move over with NJ Burkett.
Thank you. Chief, were any words exchanged? If so, what were the words? I'm told a cell phone was recovered in an alleyway on his escape route. Does that appear to be connected to the suspect?
We're working through that cell phone. Obviously, we'll be processing it forensically. And as far as words being exchanged, we do not have audio of the incident. We only have the regular video.
But nothing from witnesses?
Nothing. Well, there was one witness standing right next to the victim when he was shot. We're still trying to identify that victim. Excuse me, that witness.
We're going to go over to Aaron Katursky.
Thank you.
Chief, was he checked into the hotel across the street alone? Was he in the city alone? Was he accompanied by anybody? Did he have any known enemies or anyone that you've been able to find so far?
Like I said, we're reaching out to law enforcement in Minnesota, and we're also interviewing his co-workers and family members to see if there have been any specific threats against him in the past. As far as who was he in the hotel with, we're doing a search warrant in his hotel room right now. That might lead us, give us some more information.
All right, we're going to go over to Dean Moses.
A couple of questions. One, based on the surveillance you've seen of this individual, do you feel like he's professional? You mentioned that he did the bullet spell. Do you feel like this was a professional individual who took this man's life? And also, will it affect in any way tree life tonight?
I'll answer the part about whether or not he's a professional. That, we have no way of knowing that. From watching the video, it does seem that he's proficient in the use of firearms, as he was able to clear the malfunctions pretty quickly. But as far as the tree lighting, I'll leave that to Chief Madrick.
Yes. Good morning, Dean. Just really quick, this incident will not affect the tree lighting. The tree lighting is slated to start at 7 p.m. The show, the actual lighting of the tree will be close to 10 o'clock, actually 9:55 p.m. We will have a massive police presence out there around Rockefeller Center from 52nd Street all the way down to 47th Street. We will have plainclothes out there, a plainclothes detail out there. We will have our CRC assets, our strategic response group assets. We will have our intel division out there, a lot of assets out there to make sure people can come out and have a good time. And we're going to have additional police officers in the subways as well, so people can take mass transit to make it easier to travel into the city and enjoy the tree. This is a terrible event, but we're going to go on, and people are going to enjoy the tree lighting tonight.
All right, we're going to move on to Marshall Kramer.
I wonder if you could tell me, the mayor said that there was evidence recovered at the scene that would indicate that this was not a random event. I wonder if you could tell me what that evidence was. And by looking at the gun, it appears that there's a silencer on the gun. Was there a silencer on the gun? And does this indicate not only that it was premeditated, but this is somebody who knew his way around guns and might have been a professional?
Once again, we won't know that until we complete our investigation and identify the shooter or recover that firearm. You see a glimpse of the gun in video, so we're not able to make a determination on whether or not a silencer was used on that quick glimpse of video.
Is that a silencer?
We can't tell from that little glimpse of video. I'm not going to commit to saying that at this time. That would be part of our investigation.
And what evidence did you
There's a cell phone recovered in the alleyway, and once again, we will process that forensically and see if it comes back to this shooting.
So you don't think that the cell phone was part of Brian Thompson's, was on Brian?
Once again, this investigation is less than 5 hours old. That will be part of our investigation.
All right, we're going to move on to Joe Marino, New York Post.
Chief, do we know when Thompson arrived in New York City? My understanding is he was staying close by to the Hilton, but not at the Hilton. And has anything in the reverse video canvas indicated that these two individuals crossed paths at all?
As of right now, based on the current video that we do have, it doesn't appear that they crossed paths, and he arrived in New York on Monday.
All right, we're going to take 2 or 3 more. We're going to go Rocco, Daily News.
Chief, did he typically travel with a security detail? And even though it's early, is there anything to indicate that there had been issues with, let's say, a patient who was denied coverage either back in Minnesota or more recently, someone who lives here?
From speaking to other employees that traveled with him to New York, it doesn't seem that he had a security detail. He left the hotel by himself. Was walking, didn't seem like he had any issues at all. So I don't think he did not have a security detail.
And as far as denied coverage, I know that's typically an issue with these major companies. Any reason to believe he had been the subject of a threat?
Once again, we're looking at everything. We're looking at his social media. We are interviewing employees. We are interviewing family members. We will be speaking to law enforcement in Minnesota.
We're going to do 2 more before we wrap up. Shayna?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to ask if any cursory look at any social media, whether it's the company, whether it's his personal social media, his family's, is there anything obvious that sticks out at this early stage in the investigation?
We have not uncovered anything at this time. The investigation is still too early.
We're going to go last question over here with Jake.
All right, what you were looking at right there was the latest news conference coming in on the murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO. Again, that was on Wednesday. We are waiting to find out if there will be another one today, and we'll make sure to bring that to you right here on Live Now from Fox when we do find out. Right now, you are taking a live look over Erie, Pennsylvania. As you can see, the snow is pretty much covering the camera, and it's blowing the camera all over the place. Now, we checked in with Robert Ray with Fox Weather a couple days ago, and he is joining us now live from Erie once again. And I can say, Robert, it looks a lot different than it did just 2 days ago.
Yeah, Josh, good morning to you from Erie, Pennsylvania, as you can see, are under a blizzard warning until 1 a.m. on Saturday, as these winds are the strongest we have felt this morning, certainly even overnight. I have to think this is the heaviest squall and wind bands we have felt. Upwards to 60-mile-an-hour winds are expected potentially in some isolated areas, with potentially also another foot plus of snow that's coming in. And these are conditions that are just white out. As a matter of fact, Tomas, can you look at that flagpole right there as I stand here on Lake Erie, and look at that flagpole back and forth, and you realize how incredible this wind is. My goodness, I'm not sure I've seen a flagpole do that in a long time, even in hurricanes. And that's the power of these Great Lakes, as this Alberta Clipper that's coming down from Canada has already swept across much of the Great Lakes, including Wisconsin, parts of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and now here to the snow belt. We are also under a winter storm watch as this continues to come in, and this is on top of an already very difficult and historic snow event that started last Friday. Over nearly 3 feet of snow in Erie. In interior parts of Erie County, we have seen up to 6 feet of snow. Just remarkable. As Tomas comes back to me right now as I stand here on Lake Erie, and you just see the wave action. There has been waves out there clocked at nearly 10 feet, and I believe it, as the splash is coming up, and the deep freeze that is occurring on top of the already snowpack here is simply remarkable. Power outages in the state of Pennsylvania, specifically in this area, are upwards to 30,000 customers. That may go up. Now, Interstate 90. That is so dangerous to be out there today. You could just imagine how the visibility is after just looking at this shot here, and then you get out there and you just are going to be in a precarious situation, to say the least. Now, I mean, normally I could see downtown Erie from where I'm standing right now. It is totally blinding. It is whiteout conditions at this point as a snow squall is coming in with all of these winds. Basically, think about it like this. This is essentially a freezing tropical storm. That's what an Alberta Clipper is in its full force. And the Great Lakes act as really the energy for all of this. They're like mini oceans in a sense. And that's exactly what is happening here this morning on the normally beautiful shores of Lake Erie. Well, not so much here at the beginning of meteorological winter. And think about it, this is just the beginning of what could be a potentially very difficult next few months into the spring. This is an area that receives about 100 inches average of snow a year. Well, we're well into that. We're a quarter, even more than that in some areas. So what a start and what a morning here on Thursday, as this will continue all throughout today into Friday and dissipate middle of the night on Saturday. Josh?
All right, Robert Ray there with Fox Weather. Please stay safe. That is incredible to look at there. Robert, thank you again for being here with us.
Thanks, Josh.
And don't forget to stream Fox Weather everywhere that you stream Live Now from Fox. You can watch Robert's live reports there as he covers just about every system that moves through just about any part of the U.S. Now, Fox Weather is your winter storm headquarters. You can search Watch Fox Weather on any browser, whichever one that you use. And you can also download the Fox Weather app. Just head to the App Store, Google Play Store, and type in Fox Weather. Hit the download button, and it will send alerts right to your phone if there is a watch or warning for your area. You can also track storms just like this one. I do want to pop up our XRAD radar system so you can see exactly what we're dealing with and where Robert is located. We'll make sure to check in with him again to get the latest updates. But yeah, you can see areas that have already been hit by a lot of snow being hit once again by those blizzard conditions. Do have to head to our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour, but a lot more news to get to coming up in just a few. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. The time 7:51 on the East Coast and 4:51 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here for the next hour to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and across the world. As we get to the top of the hour here, I do want to take a live look over the White House in D.C. as we get to more political news. The results of the annual Reagan National Defense Survey were released Wednesday. More than 2,500 Americans were surveyed just days after this year's presidential election, and it has some surprising facts about the people who voted for President-elect Trump and how they feel about a number of defense-related issues. Jennifer Griffin breaks it all down for us.
No arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors.
With Russia on the move in Ukraine, China eyeing Taiwan, and a new axis of autocrats allying themselves from Tehran to Pyongyang, the Trump administration inherits a world on fire. And despite indications Americans who voted for Trump are becoming more isolationist, the 7th annual Reagan National Defense Survey found the opposite. A majority of Americans want the United States to lead with a strong military with global bases overseas. 57% of those surveyed think the U.S. should remain engaged as a world leader, a 15-point increase from last year.
It doesn't necessarily mean, if you're a Trump voter, that you want a small U.S. footprint in the world. Voters who support President Trump want to see robust American leadership in the world.
The biggest change, trust and confidence in the military. More Americans under 30 expressed a willingness to serve. To meet these threats, Americans want to increase defense spending and are concerned emphasis on the national debt will force defense cuts.
Significantly, 88% of Trump voters want to see defense spending increase. 77% of Trump voters were concerned that deficit reduction efforts will hurt the military.
Only half of those surveyed think the U.S. would prevail in a conflict with China. Overall, 80% of Americans view Russia as an adversary. 60% support the NATO alliance. 59% support Ukraine negotiating for peace, even if it means conceding some territory to Russia. Americans still favor sending U.S. weapons to Ukraine by a 20-point margin.
When it comes to Taiwan, in the event of a Chinese invasion, 73% support recognizing Taiwan as an independent country. 58% back moving U.S. military assets into the region. A little over half support establishing a no-fly zone and possibly shooting down Chinese warplanes. 48% are in favor of committing U.S. forces to defend Taiwan. At the Pentagon, Jennifer Griffin, Fox News.
A lot of interesting findings there. Jennifer, thank you so much. And you are taking a live look at this hour over the U.S. Capitol at 7:54 on the East Coast and 4:54 on the West Coast. In just over 90 minutes, the task force created to investigate the assassination attempt on now President Donald Trump will hold its final meeting. The acting Secret Service director expected to testify at today's hearing, which is set to begin around 9:30 this morning local time. Trump was on stage at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania earlier this year when a gunman opened fire, striking Trump in the ear and killing a retired firefighter in the crowd. So much to discuss about today's final hearing, so I do want to bring in a good friend of the show here on Live Now. We do have Bobby McDonald. He is a lecturer of criminal justice at the University of New Haven and a former supervisory Secret Service agent. We're, of course, going to discuss a little bit more about all of this. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Good morning, Josh. Always great to be with you.
All right, so first off, the big question here, this is the final hearing, so what can we expect from this? It does sound as though we're going to hear from the head of the Secret Service.
Yeah, exactly. I think what we're going to see is a wrap-up of this bipartisan committee's work before Congress heads to the Christmas break. I think you're going to see a last-ditch effort potentially by Acting Director Rowe to potentially save his job with the new administration. I think we're going to see tying up all of the loose ends and giving Acting Director Rowe an opportunity to once again in front of this committee, which is obviously bipartisan, something we really don't see it much in Washington, and in front of the American people, what the Secret Service has done since that horrible day on July 13th. It could have been a whole lot worse and a whole lot more catastrophic than it was. And I think we need to see what's been implemented and what's been done within the Secret Service since that time to try to righten the ship.
And expanding on that a little bit further, what are the purposes overall of these hearings? Because again, there's been a few of them over the months. What purpose do they serve?
Well, I think this is going to give the opportunity to the Secret Service to say, hey, we messed up on July 13th. We had another issue a couple of weeks later. And here's what we've done to implement remedies for those issues. Former President Trump was, in a relatively quick fashion, given a lot more assets than he was given when he had the incident on July 13th. He's now obviously the president-elect. And once that happened, he was fortified quite a bit in his protective posture with the detail that's with him now. He's with a split detail of agents who are on the president's detail who have been brought over to bring him and his family into the Washington fold again with his regular detail. So a lot of mechanisms are in place, not a lot of things that you're going to see on a daily basis or in a regular fashion, but there's a lot going on there that the Secret Service is going to have an opportunity to expand upon today and let Congress and the American people know that they're back and fully in the game.
And on that note, do you expect that we will actually see those changes implemented here?
I think you're going to hear them spoken about a little bit. I think you're going to hear them spoken about with a little bit of ambiguity, not to give away all the secrets that the Secret Service is able to implement. But I do think that Acting Director Rowe needs to continue that transparency and give good, hard, solid answers to the questions that he's going to be asked. I think when we saw former Director Cheadle testifying before she resigned, it just wasn't going very well. She was digging her heels in, didn't want to give a lot of information. You can't do that to Congress. You can't do that, especially after a very serious situation that happened to President Trump. And I think the Secret Service hopefully has learned its lesson with respect to that and the need for an incredible amount of transparency, at least as much as it can give.
All of these hearings have been live streamed. We've been able to show them to our audience in full here on Live Now from Fox. How important do you think that is for the public to be able to see all of this as it does unfold, including testimony?
Well, I think it's important that the people who want to watch this and engage in the information that'll be provided today will allow the Secret Service, hopefully, to not only continue to gain confidence with the people it protects, but also with the American people. The Secret Service serves the American people by protecting the president, his family, other elected officials to keep our democracy intact. You know, we keep hearing all of the threats on democracy. The Secret Service is an apolitical, or is supposed to be an apolitical agency that is protecting the person sitting in that office. So it's very, very important that the American people and the people who are protected by the Secret Service have the utmost trust and confidence in that agency to go out and do the very best they can do every day. And I believe they are trying to do that despite the problems that we had back in July.
As we are months and months removed from the situation that played out there in July, what question or maybe questions do you have that you hope Roe will possibly answer during that testimony?
Well, I'd like to hear some specifics as to, how he indicated he was going to be the agent of change. The Secret Service, like a lot of federal agencies, unfortunately, is a little bit of a dinosaur. It's been around for a long time. It is very deeply steeped in its traditions, its culture, which sometimes isn't very good. But I think we need to hear from him. What are some actual changes? What are some things that you have said you would have changed the paradigm? How have you done that? What has the reaction been from your workforce? How do they feel about these changes? And have they bought into the program? And if those changes, which he is going to claim he's made, have made an impact on the agency's day-to-day activities. I hope they have. And I hope the Secret Service, again, as you've heard me say with you before, Josh, has learned from this incident. This could have been catastrophic. We're thankful that it was only as bad as it was and didn't go to the next level, because you and I would be having a whole nother conversation about that if that had happened. So I hope the Secret Service is going to be willing to continue to stand up, take that responsibility, make sure all those I's are dotted and T's are crossed in their protective advances and their liaison with other agencies who we need to do our job, and continue to go out and work hard now through the holiday season and into the inauguration events in January.
Do these take on new meanings, talking about the hearing specifically, when you think about the fact that President-elect Trump is expected to take office here in just about a month and a half? Does it give these hearings maybe some more meaning overall?
Well, again, I'm not a political scientist. I hope that these are meaningful meetings and interviews today. I hope we're going to get some good information. I hope it's not just a lot of fluff and show to wrap up the hearings. I think, again, as I said before, that this being a nonpartisan committee, we haven't seen an issue in Washington in a lot of years where everybody is on the same page, that this was a horrible situation, a horrible action, and some serious actions need to be taken to fix this issue with the Secret Service to make sure that this doesn't happen again moving forward. The Secret Service has gone out every day since those incidents and has worked hard to protect the president-elect, their families, and those other people that we protect. It's important that those things continue. It's important that the Secret Service continues to work hard, and the men and women of the Secret Service are doing that. This is a lifestyle that we've all chosen, and it's something that we have to work very hard to make sure that we're perfect every single day.
All right, Bobby McDonald, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us as we are just about 90 minutes away from that hearing kicking off. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
Well, I'll be watching. I hope you'll have it on. I'll be watching to see what goes on, and hopefully we'll get a good resolution with this testimony today, and we'll get a good feeling coming out of this hearing that the Secret Service is going to be back on top of its game and doing what it knows how to do very well.
For sure. We will definitely have it on right here on Live Now from Fox as it kicks off here in just about 90 minutes. Thank you again, Bobby, for being here with us today, as always.
Thank you, Josh. Always a pleasure. See you next time.
See you next time. And you are taking a live look here over the White House in D.C. as we do get to the latest political coverage. Now, our Fox 5 D.C. team, as we check in with our different Fox affiliates, has been covering every aspect of what to expect during Trump's second administration, and that includes what we can expect from his environmental policies, Our Fox 5 DC team takes a closer look at that.
So let's talk about it with conservative energy and political strategist Christopher Johnson up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. Welcome back. Good to see you again.
Always great to be here.
All right, before we get to anything here, so obviously a lot of news broke over the weekend, and I just want to get your take on something, and we'll show it here on the monitor here. Let's play it and just get your take on it as we play it.
We're doing this?
Yes. Chris is an Ohio State fan, if you didn't know that.
Yeah. Proud alum of this great university that did not live up to their potential, to say the least, this week.
There are very few guests that I can do that for, and when I booked him, I said, I got to find some way to work it in. All right.
I should have seen it coming.
So let's talk about, I haven't seen you since the election. We now have a change in leadership, a change in what's happening here in D.C. Congress is in a Republican control. The White House, obviously controlled by President-elect Trump. You know, in terms of environmental efforts, something that you have been very passionate about, what do we see as a change in focus for this new administration? What's going to change? What's going to stay the same?
Well, I think it's going to look a lot like how J.D. Vance articulated the climate question during the debate with Tim Walz, where you're seeing this emphasis on prioritizing America's interests, which happens to prioritize the climate, because America does things cleaner and better than anybody else. We definitely do it better than our geopolitical competitors with China and Russia. And so the more that we're building stuff here, the more that we're going to be reducing emissions by proxy. And we're also going to see opportunities for new technologies that only we can really develop, because we have those cutting edge scientists and DOE labs and all the kind of cool things that a lot of other countries don't have. And so that kind of like America first, you know, if you want to put the climate first, you need to put America first. That's how we're going to be addressing this. And it may not make progressives happy. They may not be excited about it, because we're not saying this is a climate thing or an environmental thing, but emissions will go down. We're going to see prices drop as well, and we're going to see American jobs come home.
So that's obviously first and foremost one of the most important things. If you can find a way to make that work for the American worker, obviously that is a big win. People are going to go back to what Donald Trump said previously when it comes to things like climate change being a hoax. You know, but people have changed stances on that. I think some surprising names over time have sort of realized that, yeah, there is something there. There is some urgency to address how we deal with the environment.
Well, and I think it's largely due to when you asked Republicans 10 years ago about do you believe in climate change or whatever, it was like asking them during a timeshare, like, do you love your timeshare sale? Like, do you love your wife, right? Because the answer is yes. And if you say yes, then they're like, you would buy her a timeshare, right? Yeah. And so the question was always under the assumption of if you believe in climate change, then you support the Green New Deal or whatever. That has changed. We have seen a ton of work done in the Conservative Climate Caucus in the House. Senator-elect John Curtis, who's now, you know, won an election as a climate Republican in Utah, Ruby Red, Utah. That has changed how we talk about this, because there is this list of conservative solutions of nuclear and carbon capture and tax incentives and carbon tariffs and all these kind of things that everybody on the right can get behind. And the science is largely in the background of this conversation now.
Why has it worked? Well, maybe it hasn't worked based on the election results, but Democrats have always said, well, look, you elect a Republican, you elect Trump, it's going to reverse changes made to clean water, clean air efforts, things like that. That seems to be the first two things that people believe will change immediately when President-elect Trump takes office, when Lee Zeldin takes over the EPA.
Well, and I think the Zeldin pick is exactly where I wanted to go with this. The GOP of yore would basically take the EPA and put an administrator there that was like a former oil or coal lobbyist or whatever, focused explicitly on a special interest in trying to get any regulations on anything gone, right? Zeldin is a guy who was on the Conservative Climate Caucus in the House. He was on the Climate Solutions Caucus in the House, which is a bipartisan caucus focused on this topic. And this is a sign of the new GOP, the GOP 2.0, the Trump 2.0, that is going to protect clean air and clean water. They are not going to be beholden to special interests. They're not going to go out and slash regs purely for slashing regs. They're going to actually realize this is a hugely popular issue to take care of the environment and make sure that people don't associate Republicans with dirty air and dirty water and pollution.
We were having a discussion earlier tonight on Like It or Not when it comes to electric vehicles. And this has been something that, you know, under the Inflation Reduction Act, there was this massive tax credit for people who would buy electric vehicles. You know, obviously Elon Musk he arguably, say what you will about him, has done more for electrifying America's vehicle fleet than anybody else out there. But when you look at where things stand, there seems to be this, people are saying, well, hey, what about Michigan? What about automakers? What about this idea that people don't want to convert to EVs? That's been a heavy lift for the Biden administration so far. These pushes to get people to get into EVs have not necessarily worked. So what does does that say about moving forward? Is there a way to get the auto industry on board with maybe not necessarily electrifying everything, but finding ways to be better stewards of the environment?
Well, I think what you're going to see is Republicans believe in markets, not forcing people into decisions, markets, not mandates, right? That's always our shtick. And there's an opportunity here to do a lot of the things around electric vehicles really, really well and build infrastructure and build manufacturing facilities here in the United States. But the funny part about that is the people that are buying electric vehicles are disproportionately urban Democrats. That is the place where it is hardest to build charging stations, to build electrical infrastructure, to build manufacturing facilities. All of those are getting built in red America. Yeah. And so if we can find a way to get some permitting reform done, maybe in this lame duck, potentially in the next Congress, so that it makes it easier to build stuff everywhere, I think you can see markets respond to a need to electrify a lot of these vehicles and see people want to get an electric vehicle rather than being forced to or have to be forced through a tax credit or whatever.
Yeah. Christopher Johnson, good to see you, man.
Dude,
Thanks for here. We appreciate it.
A big thank you there to our Fox 5 DC team for breaking down more of that political coverage. Now, I want to head over to another affiliate on a story that we have been tracking very closely over the last 24 hours or so. That is the murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO in Midtown Manhattan in broad daylight. Those are the photos of the suspect there. Our Fox 5 New York team's Haley Fixer has been on the story, and I do want to check in with their coverage right now.
Police are still hunting for the masked gunman who killed UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside a Midtown hotel yesterday morning.
Well, the new details that we're learning include what was written on those bullets. Haley Fixler is in Midtown this morning. What are you hearing, Haley?
Hey, good morning, Kurt, Rosanna. Well, those words on the shell casings, the New York Post is saying it says deny, depose, and defend on those shell casings. But now police are urging people to come forward with information. They are actually offering a $10,000 reward for information that leads to an arrest. In fact, about a block and a half away from where we're standing right now, we did see a poster urging people to come forward. We do know that police are also looking very closely at video surrounding Central Park, hoping to identify the shooter.
These are Brian Thompson's terrifying last moments just before 7 o'clock Wednesday morning in Midtown Manhattan. The CEO of UnitedHealthcare heading to an investor meeting when this masked man dressed in black with a gray backpack comes up behind him, firing his gun.
He appeared to wait for his intended target.
These surveillance videos and pictures capturing the shooter as he ran through Ziegfeld alleyway. NYPD says he hopped on an e-bike heading up 6th Avenue and into Central Park. The suspect left behind a water bottle and 2 power bar wrappers. There's also a cell phone on scene police believe may have been linked to the shooter. This morning, the New York Post reporting there were messages written on the shell casings left behind on the scene. The messages allegedly saying, quote, deny, depose, and defend. Thompson was named UnitedHealthcare CEO in 2021 and had been with the company for 2 decades. The Minnesota native was in town, set to share information about a profitable 2025 for the 4th largest public company in the country. Detectives believe this had been long planned. Thompson's wife, Paulette, told NBC News, quote, there had been some threats. Basically, I don't know, a lack of coverage. I don't know details. I just know that he said there were some people who had been threatening him. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz says his state law enforcement will do whatever they can to help with the investigation.
To figure out what was behind this and follow through, making sure someone's brought to justice, but just our deepest condolences to the family. Horrible tragedy.
And we have seen some reports that the parent company for UnitedHealthcare was aware of some threats against some high-level executives. We, of course, are working to get some more information as this investigation and this manhunt continues. Live in Midtown, Haley Fixler, back to you guys.
Thank you, Haley, for that update. Meanwhile, jurors will once again review police and bystander video at the heart of the manslaughter trial of Daniel Penny.
This comes as deliberations enter a 3rd day. But it's not clear if a verdict will be reached before the weekend comes. Good day's Briella Tomasetti live outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan right now. What do you know, Briella?
Yeah, Kurt and Rosanna, it is unlikely that will happen, but we'll see, exactly what the situation is, because they do have to listen to more testimony today before they continue deliberating. But it has been difficult to read Daniel Penny's emotions through the duration of this trial, considering he has remained calm, collected, and he did not testify. Now, Penny's defense attorney brought up concerns about his client's safety, saying that a protester who often sat in the courtroom audience followed him out to a waiting car and then hurled violent insults at him. The judge, though, refused to bar that man from court. On day 2 of jury deliberations, Daniel Penny remained stoic, even while protesters chanted, "Convict the subway strangler," as he and his defense team left the courthouse. Demonstrators have routinely gathered outside of court since the start of the trial, and yesterday, Penny's lawyers expressed concern over disruptive protesters. Defense attorney Thomas Kenneth asked Judge Maxwell Wiley for the jury to be relocated, but Wiley denied his request and said if the situation escalates, he'll reconsider. Meanwhile, inside the courtroom, the jury asked to review evidence, including interrogation and bystander video at the heart of the chokehold case against Penny.
They're holding him down right now.
They also requested to rehear part of city medical examiner Cynthia Harris's testimony. When Harris initially took the stand, she reaffirmed her findings that the chokehold itself was what killed Jordan Neely and said no toxicological result imaginable was going to change her opinion. A pathologist, though hired by Penny's defense team, testified that Neely, a homeless street performer who struggled with mental health issues, died from a combination of schizophrenia, synthetic marijuana, and a genetic condition while struggling with the now 26-year-old Marine veteran.
Jordan will be 33 to my knowledge, you know what I'm saying, on December 18th. His birthday is coming up. I hope we get a verdict before that.
Jurors have shown motivation to deliberate, choosing the option to rehear part of Harris's testimony yesterday afternoon on their normal day off. The rest will be read back when court resumes this morning. And while the judge said he couldn't eject anyone over behavior they demonstrated outside, he instructed the jury to ignore anything that's happening out of the courtroom. That case, again, Daniel Penny's fate now in the hands of 12 jurors, and we are all waiting here outside court with bated breath for a verdict to be reached. For now, we're live, though, in Lower Manhattan. Rosanna and Kurt, back to you.
A big thank you there to our Fox 5 New York team. We have Haley Fixler, who is covering the murder of the UnitedHealthcare CEO there in broad daylight over in Midtown Manhattan, but also Briella Tomasetti, who is there on day 4 of the jury deliberations in the Daniel Penny trial. We'll be checking in with them over the course of the next several days as all of these stories do develop. Do have to head to our first 2-minute commercial break of the hour now at 8:15 on the East Coast and 5:15 on the West Coast. As we go to break, I do want to take you out to this live image that we have. I believe this is over in Erie, Pennsylvania, as the snow is really coming down. We checked in with Robert Ray a bit earlier on, and yeah, it looked just like that. We'll keep an eye on these storm systems and bring you updates as we get them. Good morning, everyone, and welcome in here on Live Now from Fox. The time 8:18 on the East Coast and 5:18 on the West Coast. My name is Josh Breslow, and I'm here for the next couple hours to bring you all of your top stories and live events from across the country and across the world. Do want to pop up this live image that we do have, one of many internationally. This is over the Israel-Lebanon border. As we know, that delicate ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah does remain intact, though the fight does continue. A lot to discuss, as always, out of the Middle East, so I do want to bring in Benjamin Anthony, the co-founder and CEO of the Miriam Institute, also a combat veteran in the Israel Defense Forces who just finished his recent tour of combat duty inside the Gaza Strip. Benjamin, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and discuss all of the latest developments here.
Good to be with you, Josh. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the situation that is developing there over in Lebanon, because we know that that ceasefire is still technically intact, but there is discussion from Reuters via U.S. officials that Hezbollah is likely to, renew its stockpile and work to gain more fighters, essentially during this ceasefire and in general, and that poses a threat to not only Israel, but the U.S. What do you make of that?
So the first thing your viewers should understand, Josh, is that Hezbollah exists exclusively in order to make war on the citizens and the people of Israel, much more so, incidentally, than to directly engage with the Israel Defense Forces, because as we've seen, Hezbollah has no chance in a direct engagement with the military of the State of Israel. So they are required, by dint of their very existence, to reconstitute themselves on Israel's northern border with southern Lebanon. I think that, unfortunately, it's inevitable that they will do so. Now, I'm an opponent of this ceasefire. I think the ceasefire represents a bad deal. I'm a veteran of the Second Lebanon War in 2006, in addition to my recent tour of duty. And I can tell you that when you bring back Lebanese civilians to the border with Israel without there being a buffer zone, which was something that we heard our leaders in Israel speak about and insist upon during the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, without that buffer zone, which there isn't according to the ceasefire, when you bring the civilians back to the border, you are bringing Hezbollah operatives and terrorists back to the border, adjacent to Israeli towns. That is going to be an ongoing effort of the terror organization, and we should not expect anything other than that to take place. Now, in response to that, of course, the Israel Defense Forces will be reconstituting itself, resting, recuperating, rejuvenating the forces, very much needed, and something that I support. But we rest at the end of the work, not midway through the work. And despite our great victories there in southern Lebanon, unfortunately, there's more to be done. So we really need to take that fight to Hezbollah.
One thing that we've heard from the IDF, they have said that they conducted airstrikes Wednesday night over in the humanitarian aid zone there in the Gaza Strip. They said that they were targeting senior Hamas commanders. So I do want to get your take as someone who has been there in the Gaza Strip. How does the IDF go about warning civilians there to evacuate? And also, does this kind of play into the fact that Hamas is using these civilians as human shields?
Yeah, very good question. So I was not based in southern Gaza. I was based along the Netzarim corridor, which runs from the eastern side of the Gaza Strip all the way over to the western coast of the Gaza Strip, where the Americans sought to establish the ill-fated aid pier in order to bring sustenance to some of the displaced Gazans. So I know that area very well, and one of the requirements there along the Netzarim corridor is to ensure the safe passage of civilians who are seeking to leave areas in which the IDF is operating militarily in order to go to safe zones elsewhere in the Strip. And I witnessed that process personally and was personally involved in the shepherding of such civilians. Now, how do the civilians know to move, to your question? They know to move because there are leaflets dropped from the air informing them of when we are going to strike, where we are going to strike. There are leaflets that inform them of the passage that they can take that is a safe passageway from where the civilians are, to where the IDF wants them to go in order to provide them with shelter and safety. And that entire journey from where the civilians are stationed to where the IDF wants them to be in order to ensure their safety is safeguarded by members of the Israel Defense Forces, incidentally, at great risk to our own lives, because seeking to infiltrate within this moving population are Hamas terrorists who are seeking, similar to Hezbollah forces in the north, to reconstitute themselves in various parts of the Gaza Strip. So they are certainly forewarned, and we facilitate their movement. One last point about this: blocking their movement where I was operating, specifically in the areas of Zaytun and of Jabalia, are Hamas. We had 300,000 Gazan civilians that we wanted to move southward in order to enable us to operate with greater freedom in those two areas, Jabalia and Zaytun. Hamas would stop them, prevent them, even shoot those civilians in order to ensure that they remained in situ to act as human shields for Hamas.
One thing I do want to talk about, well, first, I want to pop up this live image that we do have and give you a better look at it. This is, of course, the Israel-Lebanon border there. Now, we know that there's been the recovery of the body of yet another hostage who was murdered by terrorists in captivity. And I'm not sure if you can provide any sort of clarity here, but does it appear that troops are actually searching for these hostages? Do they have intel as to where they could be located, or are they finding them during operations? And while you're talking, I want to pop up this shot right here that we have. I believe this is over Khan Yunis.
Yeah, so that's a very complicated process that you've just asked about. So there are essentially two major ways in which these bodies are found. The first one is that when Hamas terrorists are taken off the battlefield and taken for an inquiry, taken for questioning inside Israel at the hands of the Shin Bet, or the intelligence forces that Israel has, one of the main sources of information that we are trying to extract from those operatives, those Hamas terrorists, is where the bodies of Israel's hostages are, or indeed where the living hostages are being held inside the Gaza Strip. Now, that is painstaking work for obvious reasons. But once the intelligence is forthcoming, it's of course operated on and it's acted upon. And we saw that some months ago as well. There was a Hamas terrorist taken off the battlefield, interrogated when it was his time to be interrogated. And he actually directed the IDF forces to a tunnel in which we'd already operated, presumed to be clear, but this particular terrorist knew that in a side cavity that was burrowed out by Hamas, Hamas had discarded and buried and covered up the bodies of terrorists. So the IDF had to take that terrorist, the bodies rather of hostages, sorry, the bodies of hostages. So the IDF had to take that terrorist that they had interrogated, that had given up that information, dress him in an IDF uniform, walk him into the tunnel that he was talking about, and have him literally point out the location of these dead hostages that had been discarded in the most depraved way. So that's one way. The second way, very briefly, is, as you've said, the ongoing operations inside these tunnels. And tunnels are still being discovered all the time. As you mentioned, I recently returned from my service inside Gaza. One of the things that we were discovering with reasonable regularity were more tunnel openings, more tunnels. And as you operate there, you do always have to be escorted by the question, are the hostages beneath my very feet here inside the Gaza Strip? Very, very difficult process, obviously heart-wrenching for us in Israel.
All right, Benjamin Anthony, thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to join us and help break down a lot of these developments that are happening out of the Middle East. Is there anything else you want to add before I let you go?
Yes, thank you for that. So in Manhattan, New York, on Tuesday, December the 10th, our organization, the Miriam Institute, is hosting 3 very unique speakers that I invite your viewers to come and meet. We're hosting a rescued hostage from inside the Gaza Strip named Almog Me'il Jan. He was rescued by our security forces during one of the most daring raids in Israel's history. He was detained there, held there for 8 months in the dungeons of Gaza. We're also hosting the son of Hamas, son of one of the founding members, Mossab Hussein Youssef, who has completely disavowed any virtue of Hamas. And we'll also be hosting an IDF combat veteran and amputee who lost his leg during the early stage of the fighting inside the Gaza Strip after the massacre of October 7th. So if people want to come and join us there, they can visit our website. That's miriaminstitute.org, www.miriaminstitute.org. Click on the events tab, and we'd love to see them show their support for these incredible speakers.
All right. Benjamin, thank you so much again for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, I do want to pop up this shot right here of Khan Yunis once again over in Gaza. As there are new developments here, we'll make sure to bring those to you on Live Now from Fox. But as you're looking at a live view over the Israel-Lebanon border, we know that ceasefire, though very fragile, is still technically intact. Again, we'll have updates on all of this here on Live Now from Fox as we do progress. Do have to head to a quick 2-minute commercial break, but on the other side, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden just spoke at an event over in the Middle East, I believe. So we're going to make sure to bring that to you here right after this 2-minute commercial break.
Dr. Biden, it's such an honor to have you join us today for this.
As I mentioned right before the break, I do want to take you out over to Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates as we have U.S. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden taking part in the Miriam Institute's Middle East and Africa Summit. Let's pop up the audio here so we can listen in.
Women's Health Initiative for Women, which is fantastic. We also know, of course, that this is such a critical issue because the data show that we face persistent underinvestment in research globally for women's health across many different disease conditions that affect women uniquely, disproportionately, or differently. And these gaps in research, of course, have limited our understanding of how we treat and prevent disease for women. I'm really interested to learn from you what initially sparked your interest in this topic that's led you to lead this effort over the last year.
Well, I guess initially, I've always been interested in women's health. It actually started back in 1993 when 4 of my friends were diagnosed with breast cancer. And I felt so hopeless. And I thought, what can I do? And I'm an educator. I was teaching community college then and now. And so actually, I decided to come up with a program that I went into high schools and I talked to young women about breast health. And actually, one of my friends died at that time from the disease. So it really sparked my interest. And then I guess it was just a couple of years ago. It was just an ordinary Saturday, actually, in this extraordinary life I've been living. And I was reading the paper in the morning, and I was reading about really how the United States loses about $2 billion a year because of women in the workforce who call out because of symptoms of menopause. And it really was kind of shocking to me. And I started to think about it and women's health. And then I started learning more about it. And I learned that really research for women's health has really been, we haven't had that much. And it's been really so underfunded. So most of the knowledge I think that we have on research for women's health really has, and this may shock you or you may not, you may know it. It's been based on men. So for the past, I don't know how many decades, most of the research they've done have, you know, the men have been the subjects. So we've been taking medications and prescribed based on men. And so I felt that, you know, women are looking for answers. I know that I've been looking for answers as a woman who has gone through menopause and gone to my doctor and said, gee, you know, do I get on hormone therapy? Do I not? What should I do? Many of you may remember, although I do see some men in the audience, the big scare with, you know, hormone therapy. Does it cause more breast cancer? Does it help breast cancer? So even I went to my own doctor and I said, hey, doc, you know, what should I do? And she said, well, I don't know. What would you like to do? And I said, what do you mean, what would I like to do? Because you're the doctor. I'm depending on you. So I had my own experience to go by. And so she's the woman really who leaves the doctor's office with more questions than answers. And, you know, why do women have more migraines? And why do women, we all know that heart disease is the leading cause of death for women, but it doesn't, heart attacks don't present in the same way in women as in men, so more women die. So there were no answers to all of these questions. So I can remember going to my husband and saying, Joe, you know, we've got to do something about this because, you know, this can't go on. I mean, women deserve answers about their health. So, because this is really an economic issue, I think, for women and globally, really, the research and the funding and the products. And so that's why I'm excited to talk about this today, and because we have to advance women's health. I mean, it has to be a priority. And we have to, I mean, first and foremost, I think we have to improve women's lives. And I think that really, Esther, that's what it's all about.
Well, so much of what you've talked about, I don't know that the general population, individuals are aware of the data points that you just mentioned in terms of disease presents differently in women than in men. In fact, for women, many of us are not even educated about our own health and how we ensure that we're tracking those symptoms in such a way that we can communicate with our providers and our physicians. And so the attention that you're bringing to this issue is so critical because it's really not just a problem that's happening in one part of the world, it's a problem that's happening really all over the world. And you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about it is an economic issue. When we think about the number of women who leave the workforce early, predicting 137 million women could come back into the workforce and stay longer if we're able to address these issues and these sets of challenges. And so as we talk about what women's health is, maybe we can just describe a little bit of that, because most people think that women's health is women's reproductive health, it's about sexual health, but we're talking about heart disease that shows up differently, Alzheimer's that shows up more in women than it does in men. We're talking about autoimmune diseases that are more in women than are in men. So as you think about your research gaps in the areas that you would like to see, where are those gaps for you that you think we really need to address going forward?
Well, I think that, you know, when it comes to women's health, when we're in our childbearing years, you know, our bodies are considered like these great miracles. But then as we age and we go from middle age and beyond, it's like our bodies are these mysteries, you know, things that we can't figure out. So we have to figure out certain things, like why do more women than men get migraines, or, you know, heart disease is the leading cause of death, and many of, you know, the heart attacks go undetected. I've heard from, you know, many women who have had heart attacks, and it isn't diagnosed because they just don't know the symptoms. So I think one of the things we have to do is really separate the data between the men and the women and study primarily women's diseases. And then we have to, you know, design our health studies according to that. And, you know, we have to bring everyone to the table. And I see, you know, I'm sure everyone here, they're private investors, they're scientists, there's nonprofits. We all have to come to the table, and we have to work together, I think, to make sure that we can make advances and strides in women's health.
Absolutely. And certainly one of the areas of gaps, as you talked about this, clinical trials and clinical research. We have seen significant progress in some areas, but it's not enough, right? Since 1993, having the National Institutes of Health, United States, mandate that women need to be part of clinical studies. For almost 100 years, all of our clinical studies were on largely males, white males, and that's actually bled into animal models. I heard a little anecdote that was funny. Women are not little men.
Or big men. We're neither.
But we really need to understand the biology, what's different in the biology for women, and how is that biology different for men. And of course, you've really been spearheading the investment in women's health research and tremendous accomplishments with the administration. Over $1 billion newly invested in just this last year alone in women's health. Let's give a hand of applause for that. And so I would love for you to talk about what those research priorities then are for you, seeing that level of investment from ARPA-H at over $100 million, the DOD, $500 million from DOD, and NIH, $200 million. I mean, just incredible. What do you want to direct this toward?
Well, I think the incredible thing was that I went to Joe, my husband, the president.
I think they know.
And I said, Joe, this is really important. And, you know, as it relates to most women's issues, I mean, he was like right on it. And he said, okay, let's, you know, I want to make sure, just like you're saying, that we've got to put more money into research. And so he directed all the government agencies to make this a priority. And he got right to work. And so, like you're saying, through DOD and through NIH, I mean, literally, and this happened in 1 year. And if any of you have worked in the United States government, or maybe any government, I mean, this is a pretty incredible thing that it got, you know, it got started and moving so quickly, I think. So all these agencies are now working on, and I hope that, I'm just praying it continues, really, because we have to prioritize women's health. So the United States is just beginning this research process, and and then we've given out so many grants, and I'm telling you, the researchers, it's just incredible, some of the things they're going to study, like endometriosis. So if you know anything about endometriosis, which I'm just learning about, usually it takes years for endometriosis to be diagnosed. But we've given money in these grants to these researchers to do this blood test, where really it's the first of its kind, where they could really diagnose endometriosis within days. It's like this real breakthrough that's happening. And then, you know, like I mentioned, migraines, you know, why do women get migraines? So we've just put money into that research. And then ovarian health. I mean, look at our aging population. And we have to know, you know, what, especially after menopause, look at how many women have so many questions about osteoporosis, about hair loss, weight loss, mental health. All these questions have never been studied before. So this is a real breakthrough that the government has taken this on as a priority. And I have to say, I'm just so proud of Joe that he jumped right on this and just went forward with it. And really, if you think about the future and you think about healthcare in the United States, I mean, how great would it be if women could really have virtual care, you know, that they could just go on to Zoom and meet with doctors and find out some of these answers, or get diagnostic tests that could be done at home, just like some of the things that we're starting to do, like with colon cancer, for instance, you know, so that women can be more involved, I think, in their health. And that's really what's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, that was Dr. Jill Biden, First Lady, as she was speaking on a panel, essentially, that was related to the Middle East, but also, as you heard, discussion about health-related topics. The time now, 8:43 on the East Coast and 5:43 on the West Coast. Do want to remind you here that coming up at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so less than an hour from now, we will have the final hearing for the Trump assassination attempt task force that is going to be meeting and speaking with Robert Rowe. He is the head of the Secret Service now. He's going to be testifying, and you can watch it all right here, live, raw, and unfiltered on LiveNOW from Fox. Do have to head to a quick break now at 8:44 on the East Coast, 5:44 on the West Coast. You're watching LiveNOW from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox, 8:46 on the East Coast and 5:46 on the West Coast. Take a look at your screen right there as the FBI is investigating reports about several mysterious nighttime drone flights that have recently occurred across central New Jersey, and they're asking the public for any help they can provide. Witnesses have spotted a cluster of what appears to be large drones, as well as possible fixed-wing aircraft flying in several areas since back in mid-November. Now, it's not clear why the flights have happened or who is flying the devices, but federal and state officials stress that there are currently no known threats to public safety. The flights have raised questions in part because they took place near a U.S. military research and manufacturing facility, as well as over President-elect Donald Trump's golf course in Bedminster. The FBI asking that residents share any videos or photos they may have of the flights, along with other relevant information. Do want to bring in Olivia DeMatteo. She lives in Mendham Borough, New Jersey, and is joining us to talk a little bit more about what she's seen, because I know, Olivia, you have seen some of this. So the images and videos here only show so much. So can you explain to me what you're seeing?
So immediately when you look out your window between 6 and 7 o'clock, you're going to see these bright green and red lights. You don't know if it's an alien, people are calling them drones, but at the same time, we don't really know if they're drones. But you're just seeing this basically unidentified lights outside your window. It's wild to see.
And what are family members, friends, just about everyone saying about this? Because I know it's kind of the talk of the town, especially all across New Jersey.
I mean, people are definitely concerned. The police don't know what it is. The government doesn't know what it is. Nobody seems to know what it is, but they're saying there's no threat to the public. So it makes people think that they know more than what they're leading on. And that's definitely concerning to a lot of people, to most people.
Have you ever seen, anything like this?
No. And, we're calling them drones, and a lot of people who haven't seen them are thinking they're the little camera drones, the Google Maps drones, but they're not. They're like the size of small cars. They're huge. So it's something that no one's ever seen before.
Is it concerning overall? I know you've kind of spoken on that already, but are you having trouble sleeping at night because this is flying overhead?
The first couple nights that I did see them, it was definitely concerning. I was opening my blinds a little bit to peek out to see, oh my God, is there a drone right outside my window? But honestly, I'm so used to it at this point. It's been happening just about every night for the past week and a half that the shock factor has worn off and I'm sleeping fine, but it's definitely concerning still.
How close are they actually getting? Are they up in the sky super far up there, or do they get fairly close?
I want to say they're they're just above the treetops. So they're not looking through your window per se, but they're definitely, they're not plane height, but they're kind of in the middle of plane and ground. So, halfway up.
The fact that the FBI is involved in this investigation, working there with state officials, what does that say to you? Does it make it any more surprising, concerning, anything like that?
It definitely makes it more concerning. I mean, anytime the FBI involved, that means there's a definite threat to the public. That's kind of what I was brought up thinking. And the fact that they're saying there's no threat, but the FBI is involved, it's just the math isn't mathing here. It's not making sense.
What question or questions do you hope are going to be answered soon? I imagine you have quite a few of them.
Yeah, I mean, I want to know why they're here. What is their purpose for being over Mendham? We're a small town. There's not much going on here, but, a coffee shop and a couple car dealerships. What purpose do they have for being over our houses every single night?
All right. Olivia, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and discuss this a little bit. Of course, as we mentioned, the FBI is investigating. They say they're trying to figure out exactly what this is, so we're going to keep in touch with them to get more details here. But I did want to ask, is there anything you want to add specifically before I let you go?
Nothing too specific. It's just, I think everyone's in the same boat that we want answers.
For sure. All right. Thank you again for taking the time to be here, and hopefully they go away and you don't have to see them anymore.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. Time now 8:51 on the East Coast, 5:51 on the West Coast. Do have to sneak away for our final 2-minute commercial break of the hour, but so much more coverage to get to in just a matter of minutes. You're watching Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox. The time 8:53 on the East Coast and 5:53 on the West Coast. I do want to get back to one of the big stories that we have been following all throughout the morning, and I want to warn you, viewer discretion is advised. As you can see, this footage obtained by our Fox 5 New York team. The video shows a masked man shooting UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside of a Midtown Manhattan Hilton hotel. This was yesterday. At one point, the gun appears to jam, and the assailant moves toward a struggling Thompson as he attempts to shoot. We also have this photo that was released by investigators here. Want to pop it up for you on your screen. They say this is who they are looking for. Haley Fixler with our Fox 5 New York team has been covering this around the clock and filed this report.
These are Brian Thompson's terrifying last moments just before 7 o'clock Wednesday morning in Midtown Manhattan. The CEO of UnitedHealthcare heading to an investor meeting when this masked man dressed in black with a gray backpack comes up behind him, firing his gun.
He appeared to wait for his intended target.
These surveillance videos and pictures capturing the shooter as he ran through Ziegfeld alleyway. NYPD says he hopped on an e-bike heading up 6th Avenue and into Central Park. The suspect left behind a water bottle and 2 power bar wrappers. There's also a cell phone on scene police believe may have been linked to the shooter. This morning, the New York Post reporting there were messages written on the shell casings left behind on the scene. The messages allegedly saying, quote, deny, depose, and defend. Thompson was named UnitedHealthcare CEO in 2021 and had been with the company for 2 decades. The Minnesota native was in town, set to share information about a profitable 2025 for the 4th largest public company in the country. Detectives believe this had been long planned. Thompson's wife, Paulette, told NBC News, quote, there had been some threats. Basically, I don't know, a lack of coverage. I don't know details. I just know that he said there were some people who had been threatening him. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz says his state law enforcement will do whatever they can to help with the investigation.
To figure out what was behind this and follow through, making sure someone's brought to justice, but just our deepest condolences to the family. Horrible tragedy.
And as that investigation does progress, we'll make sure to bring you updates the second we get them. As of right now, no news conference has been announced for today, but if the NYPD or other city officials do hold a news conference, we'll bring that to you right here on Live Now from Fox. Do want to pop up this live image that we now have. This is inside of the hearing room, essentially, where we are going to have the hearing get underway at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time with the Trump assassination attempt task force. They have been interviewing several folks, holding these hearings to gather more information about really how the Secret Service did kind of take care of everything on the day that Trump was shot in the ear as he was on stage during a campaign rally. This was over in Butler, Pennsylvania, back in July. Now, we are expecting there will be testimony from the head of the Secret Service, so we'll make sure to bring that to you live, raw, and unfiltered right here on Live Now from Fox as it does get underway. Again, that is expected to start very soon, sometime around 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, a bit earlier on, we were showing you this kind of discussion between Dr. Jill Biden and others on the Middle East and health. And there was actually a little bit more to that. So I do want to play that for you now on Live Now from Fox. And on the other side of that, we will have Christy Matino in the hot seat with everything you need to know on this Thursday, December 5th.
At home, just like some of the things that we're starting to do, like with colon cancer, for instance, you know, so that women can be more involved, I think, in their health. And that's really what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, as we think about what you've been able to catalyze along with the president, there's been a response that's come from the private sector.
It's
and
been really
the nonprofit.
exciting.
That must have been exciting for you just to see the community stand up and say, wow, we have a champion on this issue. We get the level of visibility on this issue. And now they're really excited to work on it.
Well, and so many researchers, when we put a call out for grants. I mean, there were so many researchers who said, I want in, and this is what I want to study, and this is what, I want to learn. And I think we're ready for this, and it really spurred this whole new interest in women's health. And
even ARPA-H, as referenced a bit earlier, they heard from 34 different countries. Were you surprised by that? That 34 different countries responded?
Like I'm saying, I think now is the moment. Now is the time. Yeah. And I think that women are just hungry for information. So Esther, like when you get together with your girlfriends or your family, what do we talk about? Health. That's all we talk about. It's not like somebody's talking about their aches and pains. It's like, hey, what are you doing for menopause? Are you trying these supplements? Or what did your doctor say about doing the hormone patch? Or what did your doctor, we're learning from each other. That's not the way it really should be, because we're getting misinformation a lot of times. We need to have really evidence-based research. And I think that's what this women's health research does, to provide the funding so that we can get the answers.
And it's absolutely critical when you think about the population in the world. Almost half are women. In some countries like the US, it's over 50%.
That's right.
That are women. And the lack of evidence-based data, responses, products to service those women, it feels like a missed opportunity, but it really has broader economic impacts as a result of that. We really need to solve for that. So I've been really excited to see the response that's come from that private sector and the community around these sets of issues, and to see the federal government's leadership from the U.S. perspective to de-risk these potential innovations that can serve potentially as a catalyst for what we can scale going forward. The question, of course, for everyone is, how do we continue this momentum? We've had this incredible last 12 months. We've seen the over $1 billion from the federal government's investment. We're seeing the response that's coming out of biopharma and startups and women's services, products companies and investors and the like. And what we always want to see is that that continues over time. So as you think about what you've been able to lead and going forward, what is your call to action? What would you like to see those who are here in the room, those who are watching online, where do you want them to direct their attention?
Let me see who's in the room here. So, really the momentum now is on our side. We've just started, and we have so far to go and so much more to learn. And, in 2021, the Boston Consulting Group estimated that really the revenue from women's health research, we have money, we want answers, we want products, we want things that are going to make our lives simpler and better and for longer, because women are living longer, but we're living with chronic pain. So we're not, even though we're living longer, we're not really happy that, because of the lives.
We have that decade of poor health. So we live longer, but we spend those last 10 years in poor health compared to men. Right?
That's exactly right. So, we can really, all of us in this room, there is the potential here to change the world as it relates to women's health. So I really want to call on everybody here in this room, in the months, in the years that follow, to really get involved and really try to organize and put money into research and pay attention, and let's move this forward, and let's close the current gaps that occur. And I know that as Joe leaves office, as we leave office together, I know that one of the things that I'm going to prioritize is women's health and funding for women's health. And so I hope that all of you here will join me in that commitment to women all over this world, because that's what we're hungry for. We need the answers, we want the answers, and Esther, I think you have to agree, we deserve the answers.
I would say we deserve the answers. No one in this room or anywhere came into the world without a woman. We need to prioritize women's health.
Yeah. So thank you.
to follow up on that call to action, absolutely agree. I'm so pleased that the Milken Institute, responding to the initiatives and others, really established a women's health initiative, really to continue to galvanize our community with the sets of stakeholders that we bring together to say that let's not let our foot off the gas. We need to continue on, and we need to prioritize very specific initiatives and projects going forward, because just as we spent the last 100 years focused on men and many years before that, we need to then catch up and spend the next many decades focused on women's health. And if we are able to do that, as you've talked about, the research says we can unlock about $1 trillion in the global economy by 2040 if we're able to continue to work together.
So I hope you investors are hearing that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for prioritizing women's health. And we certainly look forward to all of you walking in lockstep with us to make sure that we are not losing the momentum here.
For sure. For sure. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, those were comments from First Lady Dr. Jill Biden there in the Middle East in Abu Dhabi. You heard them discussing a range of topics, but mostly specifically talking about health care. My name's Christy Matino. Thanks for joining us this morning on Live Now from Fox, and we've got a lot going on today. I did want to start with this live look right now at the Israel-Lebanon border, as we are hearing right now live from Israeli government spokesperson David Mencer discussing all things in the Middle East. Let's head over there and listen in.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for that delay. We had some technical issues which have been sorted out now, thankfully. So thank you for bearing with us. I'll put the text of my words in the group and to be shared with people that couldn't hang around. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom. I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate in the Office of the Prime Minister. On this Thursday, the 5th of December, day 426 of the October 7th war. Just a couple of quick points from me and then straight to your questions. On the tragic fallen amongst Israel's armed forces, it is with regret that I share with you that since our last briefing, 808 have fallen. Staff Sergeant Zamir Burke was 20 years old and from Bet Shemesh. He fell a week ago in a battle in northern Gaza, and Captain Omer Maxim Nutra was 21 years old and a lone soldier who immigrated from New York. He was killed by Hamas on October 7th last year, with his body still being cruelly held hostage by Hamas. His parents for the last year have gone the world over to raise Omer's plight. Enormous determination, with enormous trauma. They campaigned across the world about his struggle, but now his death has been confirmed. The achievements of the military campaign are many, but the war has unfortunately exacted a very heavy price. Our hearts are with the bereaved families. May their memories be a blessing. Next, last night we received news that the body of our hostage, Itai Svirsky, his body was recovered in a complex and courageous operation by Israel's security service. He will now get the dignified burial he deserves, unfortunately joining his parents, Orit and Rafi, who were brutally murdered on October the 7th. So I wanted to share with you our latest data on our hostages. On October 7th last year, Hamas took 251 hostages. 155 people have been rescued and returned. As of now, Hamas holds 100 hostages in Gaza. Now, 96 abducted on October 7th and 4 others taken before October 7th last year, since 2014. We believe that Hamas holds 36 bodies, 2 kidnapped in 2014, the late Hadar Goldin and Oron Shaul, and the bodies of 34 others taken on October 7th last year. Of the 96 people taken hostage on October 7th last year, 83 are women, 83 are men, 13 are women, 2 are children under 5, Ariel and Kfir Bibas. 86 are Israelis, 10 are foreign nationals, 8 from Thailand, and 1 from Nepal, and 1 from Tanzania. 155 hostages were either released or rescued. That's made up of 4 Israelis released before the November 2023 outline deal with Hamas, and 1 was rescued by IDF soldiers. 81 Israelis and 24 foreign nationals were released during the outline deal almost exactly a year ago from Hamas from November 24th to November 30th last year. 35 hostages were murdered by Hamas and their bodies were returned to Israel by the IDF. And 3 hostages were accidentally killed by the IDF. In Operation Golden Hand in February the 12th, 2024, our forces rescued 2 hostages in Rafah. Louis Har was 71, and Fernando Marma is 61. Operation Arnon in June the 8th, 2024, our forces rescued Noah Argamani, age 25, Almog Meir, age 21, Andrei Kozlov, age 27, and Shlomo Ziv, age 40. They were all rescued from the center of Nusirat in Gaza. On October 27th this year, the IDF rescued Farhan Kadi. So, in conclusion, the state of Israel will do everything in its power to bring them all home. Next, on the latest Amnesty report that condemns Israel, let me share with you the 5 reasons why it's not actually worth the paper it's written on. Amnesty's bias, firstly. With a record as long as your arm, Amnesty has a documented history of framing Israel as fundamentally illegitimate. For Amnesty, Israel was born guilty in 1948 and have been guilty ever since. They ignore the genocidal intent and actions of Hamas. Number 2, Holocaust inversion. Genocide, they cry about Israel. They distort reality and downplay the clear intent of Hamas to annihilate Israel. Just listen to what Hamas and Iran say. 3, selective evidence. Amnesty's claim lacks credible, verifiable evidence and omits Israel's humanitarian measures. 1,166,000 tons of aid have gone into Gaza since the start of this war. Gaza's population has actually increased. Next, legal misrepresentations. Amnesty manipulates international law to falsely portray legitimate self-defense as genocide. And lastly, Amnesty encourage terror tactics. By actively attacking Israel for defending itself, Amnesty incentivized terror groups to murder their own people. Next, on COGAT and aid going into Gaza, more food and aid are going in all the time. Here are the latest figures. In October this year, 34,000 tons of aid went in, but in November this year, 54,000 tons went in. 65% is food, the rest being shelter, fuel, medical supplies, and cooking gas. Over the past few days alone, more than 120 trucks loaded with flour for bakeries have gone in through Gate 96. That will supply 15 bakeries for several days. And the latest figures are just yesterday, 161 humanitarian aid trucks went in, 120 via Kerem Shalom crossing, 41 via the Eres crossing for civilians in northern Gaza. The trucks carried food, flour for bakeries and medical aid, including vaccines. 58 trucks were collected from the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom, but still our almost daily reminder that there are still 800 trucks worth of aid awaiting collection on the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom. As we've said before, Israel is committed to get more and more aid in. So that's the end of our briefing here today. Questions, please, in the chat.
All right, so we were just listening in to Israeli government spokesperson David Mencer. You hear him talking about a range of issues here. You heard him discussing the status of some of the hostages and bodies. You also hear him discussing aid getting into Gaza. We are going to go away for a quick 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. We'll be back in just 2 short minutes. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. We're going to stay with our international news right now as the United States is preparing to send Ukraine an additional $725 million in military assistance, including counter-drone systems and munitions for its high-mobility artillery rocket system, which could indicate more of the longer-range missiles are headed to the battlefield. Ukraine has been pressing for more of the longer-range missiles to strike additional targets inside Russia. President Joe Biden has pledged to spend all of the military assistance funds Congress approved this year for Ukraine before the end of his administration on January 20th, which before Monday's announcement included about $7.1 billion in weapons that would be drawn from the Pentagon stockpiles. Addition to all of this, yesterday, Hungary's foreign minister said a meeting of his counterparts from NATO member countries in Brussels had led to, quote, no consensus on the prospect of inviting Ukraine to join the transatlantic military alliance, a step Kyiv sees as an essential condition to bringing the end to Russia's war. We want to bring in Mark Tominsky. He is a non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council Eurasia Center to break this all down for us just a little bit more. Thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. We appreciate it.
Thank you again for having me.
Of course. Well, first of all, can we just break down a little bit what is in this package?
Certainly. The new announcement that President Biden made is additional assistance for Ukraine, which is further ammunition for the weapons the United States is sending to Ukraine. It provides equipment to help the Ukrainians fix or address weapons and equipment that the Americans are sending to fix these in case they were damaged during the war. It allows additional ammunition for HIMARS. There are drones and other capabilities that will allow the Ukrainians to defend themselves from the ongoing Russian invasion.
Why is President Biden doing this now? Is it because he's leaving office, or was there a shift in the conflict going on that prompted this?
There are a few reasons. First of all, while the announcement was made this week, this is, as you stated earlier, previously approved aid by Congress, and a lot of this equipment that is being sent to Ukraine was stockpiles that the United States has. And this works well for the United States as well. It sends equipment, it sends weapons to Ukraine, and then it allows Americans in factories throughout the country to rebuild and replenish American stockpiles with the newest and latest technologies, which helps with American national security too. Furthermore, with the announcement of North Korean soldiers entering the war and fighting alongside Russian troops, the Biden administration saw as an escalation in the war, and they made the decision to allow Ukrainians to finally strike military targets within the Russian Federation. And earlier this week, the administration also said that they want to put Ukraine in the best possible state that it can be in as it approaches the cold winter months, which is, as experts have seen, may be a challenging period for Ukraine at the time. Aside from these reasons, there's also the upcoming change in administrations. President Biden previously spoke with Speaker of the House Johnson this week, asking if he could send an additional $24 billion in aid to Ukraine. The Speaker said no. In addition to an interview Speaker Johnson gave in October of this year, he said if the House remained within Republican control, that he no longer has an appetite to send further assistance to Ukraine. So this is a response for the current administration, to provide additional assistance to Ukraine in case, following in 2025, current politics may see a less likelihood of sending further assistance to Ukraine at this time.
Mark, as I brought you in here, I said that Hungary's foreign minister said in a meeting in Brussels on Wednesday that there was no consensus on this prospect of inviting Ukraine to join NATO. Also, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying last week that an offer of NATO membership to territory under Kyiv's control could, quote, end the hot stage of the war. What does that process of getting Ukraine to join look like? And what are some of the concerns with letting Ukraine into NATO?
The process for all NATO aspiring members is the same, in that the government has to reform itself and set a certain standard that is with Western traditions, democratic values, strengthening of institutions, eliminating corruption. In addition, states have to meet a certain amount of standards for their defense capabilities, because NATO is not only a democratic alliance, but is also a military alliance. And this is something most recently what Sweden and Finland did and Norway when they're all joining, as well as members in the eastern part of Europe. So for example, Poland joined in 1999, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania joined in 2004. And then we had the Nordic states, Sweden and Finland, recently join because of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Unfortunately, while Ukraine is continuing to do a lot of these anti-corruption reforms, there are several members within NATO, particularly Germany and the United States, that are still hesitant to allow Ukraine to join, simply because there's a clause that says for aspiring NATO members that all territories that have a dispute cannot be admitted. Of course, Ukraine did not start this war. Russia launched the full-scale invasion because it was the Russians who sent troops and tanks and missiles into Ukraine. But some of the traditional members will still see that even though Ukraine did not start this war, they would not want to allow a country that is currently in a war to enter the organization. But the acceptance and view of Ukraine has changed over time, over the last 3 years during the war. Now, no longer do you have Eastern European countries that are very supportive of Ukraine, but you have also countries in Central Europe and Western Europe, such as France, Czechia, and Italy, that are also very supportive of Ukrainian membership into NATO. So there's a growing consensus, but there is still no firm date to allow Ukraine to join at this time.
One of the last things I wanted to talk about, again, President Biden in the final weeks of his presidency here, President-elect Donald Trump has said that he would bring an end to this conflict. But can we just look forward to what a Trump administration would look like? And has he said specifically how he would end this conflict?
So during the campaign trail, former President Trump, as well as Senator Vance, said that they would like to end the war as quickly as possible, stating that, of course, the war has been devastating. Thousands of Ukrainians have died. But during the campaign, did they not specify how they would end the war or what this would entail? More recently this week, President Vladimir Putin of Russia said that he has no intention of ending the war. He has no intention of having negotiations with the United States and with Ukraine. And most important, while the Ukrainians, of all people, want the war to end because of the atrocities the Russians are committing on them. Numerous organizations such as the International Republican Institute, Democratic National Institute, and Carnegie Endowment have conducted numerous public surveys with Ukrainian citizens, and Ukrainians believe that the only way for the war to end is by forcibly pushing the Russians out of Ukraine. The Ukrainian government is working with the incoming President Trump administration. And at this time, while various media outlets are commenting on what a peace negotiation may look like, the Ukrainian government and the incoming Trump administration have been very quiet and have been not commenting as they look to work together to try to bring an end to the conflict on Ukraine's terms.
All right, Mark, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Live Now from Fox. Lots of valuable insight there. We do appreciate you.
Thank you again for having me.
Of course. All right, we are going to pivot now to some other news. Do want to give you a live look of other things we've got going on today. This is one of the big stories that we're watching. The House task force on the 2 assassination attempts of President-elect Trump are gathering for its final hearing today ahead of the release of its highly anticipated report. U.S. Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe is going to testify before lawmakers. Task force members will then huddle behind closed doors to consider their final report. Again, that is this live look that we are keeping an eye on for you here at Live Now from Fox. Set to start here. It's slated to start at about 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. We will bring that to you as soon as we see it. Did also want to pop up this live look right now as winter weather is barreling across the United States in some areas. Millions of people from the Great Lakes to the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast are facing another blast of winter weather as a powerful winter storm races across the U.S. This picture right here is in Meadville, Pennsylvania. It's bringing snow squalls and blizzard conditions to regions that were just slammed by the first significant lake effect snowstorm of the season. We are going to jump away for a quick 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. As I said, lots more news and live events to get to, so you don't want to miss us. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. Again, I'm going to take you out to this live look right now as we are awaiting the House task force to get started here again on the 2 assassination attempts of President-elect Trump. They're gathering for their final hearing to discuss that today ahead of the release of their highly anticipated report. Again, a little bit of background here. The U.S. Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe, again, going to testify before lawmakers, and task force members are then going to huddle behind closed doors to consider their final report. Trump held a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th when a 20-year-old gunman opened fire on the event from just outside its security perimeter, injuring Trump and killing one rally attendee. Now, if you also remember, later in September, United Secret Service agents opened fire on a 58-year-old man who had a rifle aimed at Trump's Palm Beach, Florida golf course, where the president-elect was out for the day. These incidents prompted heavy scrutiny of the United States Secret Service and its security practices and led to the ouster of Director Kimberly Cheadle. Again, set to start here in just about 2 minutes, and we will bring this to you live, raw, and unfiltered here on Live Now from Fox without commercial break. When that does start, again, just letting you know we are keeping an eye on this. And I did also want to turn to some other news as well, as it is a busy day in Capitol Hill here. This is another live look at Pete Hegseth, President-elect Trump's nominee for the Secretary of Defense, is ramping up his pitch to lead the Pentagon with back-to-back meetings on Capitol Hill. Since his nomination, Hegseth has been meeting privately with senators in Washington, D.C. in this effort to earn their support ahead of his confirmation hearing next year. Hegseth was back on the Hill for a second day yesterday as well, meeting with incoming Senator Roger Wicker, who's set to be the Armed Services Committee chair ahead of a crucial meeting with incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune. Again, all of these live events set to happen here momentarily, and just letting you know once again that we will bring it to you uninterrupted when we do hear the Trump hearing begin. In the meantime, I did want to pivot to some other political news as we do await. The budget axes may start swinging on Capitol Hill today. Tech titans Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, tasked by President-elect Trump to slash government spending, are meeting with lawmakers this morning. But as Doug Luzader reports from Washington, the resistance is already kicking in.
Well, this meeting on Capitol Hill today is all part of the incoming Department of Government Efficiency in an effort to cut government spending and regulations. But even Musk and Ramaswamy have their work cut out for them. Does it really cost 3 cents to make a penny? How about the Pentagon's inability to pass an audit year after year, or government buildings that are largely vacant because so many federal workers are still at home?
I think we can do at least $2 trillion.
Billionaire Elon Musk has already made some big promises for government cuts. He and former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy will be on Capitol Hill today to meet with lawmakers who are on board with the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE.
I'm really excited to be part of the DOGE caucus in the Senate.
Republican lawmakers are already lining up to be a part.
So we have the ingredients, we have the conditions right now to actually be able to make really dramatic change.
They want to meet, I'm happy to meet with them.
Even Florida Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz says he's on board with DOGE to a point.
The era of big government is over.
This won't be the first time that there has been a growing consensus to cut the government, but it is extremely difficult. Ramaswamy and Trump himself have already said that cuts to big spending drivers like Medicare and Social Security are off the table, and the bureaucracy can fight back. Already, as the Biden team is on its way out, the Social Security Administration just inked a deal with tens of thousands of its employees to work from home until 2029. And that runs counter to DOGE's efforts to get those workers back to the office. And something else that DOGE may push for, ending daylight savings time. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
Thank you to Doug Luzader. And we actually just did hear some very brief remarks from Florida Senator Rick Scott just moments ago, and I actually did want to play them out for you. Again, they're only about 20 seconds or so, but let's turn over there quickly and listen in.
Good morning. So I just had a great meeting with Pete, the next Secretary of Defense. I'll tell you why I support him. I admire people that are willing to put on the uniform and lead troops in a battle. I'm very proud of my father. He's one of 3,000 people that did all 4 combat jumps with 82nd Airborne, and after that fought in the Battle of the Bulge. I'm very proud of him. Same way I'm proud of Pete. There's not a lot of Americans that have been willing to put on the uniform and have actually led troops in battle and brought them back safely, and knows people that lost their lives, knows people that are injured. When he goes to the Department of Defense, he'll walk in with the mentality that he's going to take care of our warfighters. He's going to make sure they have the right equipment and they're not put in harm's way when they shouldn't be put in harm's way. He's not going to support forever wars. He's not going to support going into battle where we don't even have a plan. So I think he's going to do a great job. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure he's confirmed as the Secretary of Defense. I think we all have to really appreciate the people that are willing to put on the uniform and defend the freedom of this country. Thank you.
Senator, did you... All right, again, that was just moments ago, and this is that live look right now, this media stakeout. You just heard the senator there speaking about Pete Hegseth, President-elect Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense. Again, ramping up his pitch to lead the Pentagon with back-to-back meetings today on Capitol Hill. We did just hear moments ago from Senator Rick Scott. In the meantime, as we do await these other live events to start, I did want to stay on the topic of politics, giving you a live look right now at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. President-elect Trump's cabinet picks spent another day on Capitol Hill in the hopes of locking in votes before the Senate confirmation hearings begin. Some nominees are still raising eyebrows, however. Fox News senior national correspondent Kevin Corke has more from Washington.
More meetings were underway on Capitol Hill Wednesday as President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet picks rubbed elbows with senators ahead of confirmation hearings. And while Attorney General pick Pam Bondi and Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth continued to make the rounds, there was a new face roaming the halls as hedge fund manager Scott Bessent, who Mr. Trump selected to be his Treasury Secretary, stopped by.
I'm here today to listen, learn, and meet the senators.
Incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune told Fox News every candidate deserves a fair vetting process.
These are the president's nominees, the people he wants in these key positions. So I don't prejudge any of these candidates.
Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, the co-chairs of the newly formed Department of Government Efficiency.
All right, we are going to pause that coverage because I did want to pop up this live look right now, as it does look like the House task force on the 2 assassination attempts of President-elect Trump is underway. Let's turn up the sound here and listen in. Okay, so we're still waiting for this to kick off. Momentarily, it is, oh, actually, let's turn up the sound. It might have just started.
Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. And so typically in Washington, we were supposed to start at 9:30, so we've moved it already back to 9:37. I guarantee you, though, that this task force was working on time every day, trying to get the answers the American people need.